Welcome everybody. Thank you for attending our school board meeting tonight. I'm going to ask everybody if they would kind of move to a mode of silence, if you would, and we'll get this meeting started. So thank you for joining us here on this Monday, May 23rd, regular Faribault Public Schools school board meeting. So item number 1 deals with our strategies, if you're looking at our agenda. Item number 2 deals with our face coverings policy. Item number 3 is where our meeting can be viewed live at the following link, https, whatever that is, www.youtube/userid/ISD656/live. And item number 4 is our call to order. So, Ms. Steves, will you please determine if we have a quorum present?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do.
Thank you. With that, I'd ask everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that, Mr. Bellingham. Our next item is number 5, the approval of the agenda. And if you have the agenda in front of you, I would like everyone to consider moving items 12A and B under other matters, which will be the consider approval of Nicholas Jurin's employment agreement and consider the approval of Sean Evans' employment agreement up on the agenda to items 7, D, and E. Then everything else under 12 would just move up, starting with C, moving to A, and so on. So that way, these two gentlemen and their families do not have to stay with us later into the evening. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda with those two changes.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson and a second by Ms. Steves. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. And on that note, I will say that we do believe Mr. Roche will be here shortly, but just not for the start of the meeting. So, the next item on the agenda is number 6, School Board Public Comment Guidelines. This is an opportunity for residents, business, and property owners, parents, students, and employees of the Faribault Public School District to address the board. You must sign up in person at the board meeting and address the board from the podium. Ms. Everett, where's the podium going to be? Right there tonight? Okay, for now. Thank you. Members of the public will address the remarks with civility and respect. After being recognized by the chair, each individual will identify themselves and the group they represent, if any. Please state your reason for addressing the board. This is not a time to debate an issue, but for the board to hear your comments. Public comment is not available at work sessions, closed sessions, or special board meetings of the school board. The Minnesota Government Data Practices Act prohibits comment about specific student or staff matters, even without naming them in open session. This includes the public comment portion of our meeting. The board respects and values input, but when it relates to a specific student, staff, or to a specific matter, such input must be heard by the appropriate personnel, such as the building principal or superintendent, and not during an open meeting of the school board. Anyone interested in making a public comment will be asked to complete an information card before the meeting starts, providing their name, address, and topic of their comment. All comments must conform to School Board Policy 206, which is available for review on the district website at www.faribault.k12.mn.us. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to make comments on one specific topic. Each topic will have a total of 15 minutes allowed for comments. So with that, I would like to open up the community comment. And I believe, and I apologize here if I state this incorrectly, our first one is Tiffany Flynn or Tiffany Forslund. Am I pronouncing that?
It's Flynn Forslund.
Oh.
It didn't fit.
Okay, thank you.
It's a mouthful.
Thank you. And if you would just introduce yourself and what topic you're going to speak on tonight.
Do you want me to sign this? Or?
Yes, if you would, please. Thank you.
Try not to them off like that. Okay.
And Mr. Bellingham here, he's the timekeeper, so he'll keep it to 3 minutes. And if you're running long, I'll politely interrupt you and just ask if you're going to button it up quickly and go from there. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, so my name is Tiffany Flynn Forsland. I am the Director of Educational Affairs at Minnesota Parent Union. We have parent chapters throughout the state that support and give parents the knowledge to advocate for their children within the school system. So we have a Faribault chapter to address, there's like a lack of inclusion the parents are feeling for their families that are enrolled in the school district. So we are here seeking more cohesiveness, better environment for the Somali Muslim children that attend the Faribault School District. And so I have a list. So one is there appears to be an automatic enrollment into ESL, just being enrolled as a Somali student. 2, the after-school program, and is that inclusive to the Somali students? 3, there is a concern about bullying from students. 4, food at lunch. The Muslim religion does not eat pork, so they do not want their children to have pork served to them. And something about the food not being cooked enough in that issue. Students, they feel like some students are graduating not reading or writing well. 6, there's an issue between the Muslim religion and trying to understand the LGBTQ community. So they would like some changes with that. 7, the physical welfare and safety of their children. And 8, to address or figure out how there can be a Somali representative to the board as well as an interpreter. And so staying in within 3 minutes, that is the gist of it, and that's why we're here.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, yeah, could we have her sent to the board, her name and email address?
Yeah, I believe it'll be on the sign-up sheet, and Ms. Averill can send that out.
Okay, thank you.
And I apologize if I state this name incorrectly. Fatoon Ali, is that correct?
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. If you didn't mind, just come on up and...
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Fatoon Ali. I am Minneapolis. I work with Minnesota Parents Union and director of advocacy. We have chapter here in Faribault. We have a few Somali families here that need help and better education here, and issues that my coworker already talked about. And I'm here to also speak in Somali because most of them do not speak English, and I will be requesting interpreter next time when other board meetings come next time. And the issues that they're facing is lack of interpreters. And there's all of the list that Tiffany talked about, and bullying, physical abuse, beatings, and pork that we don't eat, and after-school programs. Kids are not getting the education they deserve, and a lot more. So I'm gonna speak Somali now. Waxaan u hadlayaa waalidada joogta Minnesota Parent Union oo Faribault degan oon u sheegaynaa inay luuqadii inay turjubaan u baahan tihiin waxbarashada ilmaha ay aad u liidato qaansiir aanan cunin cuntada ay bixinayaan qaarkood aynan si fiican loo karin ilmihii dhib lagu hayo cusurnimo iyo dhibaato kalena la soo kulantay oo la dilayo marka inaan ka codsano sida gabadha Tiffany tiri inaan naloo qabto qof anagana matala idinka magaalada degan in la matala inaan mataqaanaa codkiina dhiibatiin sida inay la socdaan af Soomaali qof ku hadlayni keenan marka inaad codsatiin oo wada hadashiin oo codkiina dhiibatiin muhiim waay waxaan maanta u nimadnay in isbedel la sameeyo oo maanta noo bilaabaan marka iyaguna way nala soo xiriiri doonaan hadii la hayra okay thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is Linda Moore.
I'm Linda Moore. And I'm a concerned citizen. This is about gender ideology. The gender phenomenon is one ideological context that is being propagated in our Faribault public schools. There's a story in the Washington Post of a 13-year-old girl, Patricia, who was never gender dysphoric until she was 13. The parents took their daughter to a therapist who told the parents to support their child's trans self-diagnosis, which eventually would progress into surgical and hormonal treatments. However, Patricia's parents...
Ms. Moore, sorry, can you just move the mic a smidgen away?
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
However, Patricia's parents took her for a second opinion to someone who properly evaluated Patricia and found her dysphoria resulted from trauma Patricia experienced 1 year earlier. When she was 12, she was assaulted sexually by another girl and then was introduced to gender pronouns. From the HYA survey, from the HYA survey, one parent noted the first week in school, the teacher gave the students a form to fill out with, which asked what pronouns they identified with. Another respondent noted, last spring, students were pressured to participate in a day of silence for transgender awareness, and a Queen fun fact of the day was read in the announcements. And then we have the recent survey to students sent out by the MDHS. This sounds like introducing to me. Now, one psychologist in California who is transgender is making quite a stir in the transgender healthcare. Dr. Erica Anderson believes the gender phenomenon has gone too far. Anderson asserts a fair number of kids are getting into it because it's trendy. Kids are all about being accepted by their peers. It's trendy for professionals too, this counselor notes. I'm often the naysayer at our meetings. I'm not sure it's always trans. I think in our haste to be supportive, we're missing that element. In fact, Anderson stresses that no one under 26 should go through gender exploratory therapy. So in our haste to be supportive, are we doing more harm than good? Think about it. We have a list of queer, lesbian, transgender books in the public school libraries, even the elementary. How many of our children, like Patricia, are being introduced and supported via use of pronouns, sexually explicit books, and surveys in the classroom? Did you know that ex-transgenders are now asserting that it's abuse to affirm gender confusion? They state this affirmation is a destruction of core identity. It plants the notion in these minds that the essence of who they are is wrong, someone to be eradicated. Lastly, we have been assured that the book It's Perfectly Normal, purchased 20 years ago, is no longer on the shelves and that the book was never checked out. So taxpayer money purchased a book that was never checked out? Maybe, I'm almost done. Maybe never checked out, but was it ever looked at? Patricia's story all over again. How many little Patricias have suffered and will continue to suffer due to trendy and misguided principals in our classrooms? Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Linda Moore. I'm sorry, Linda Boudreau, sorry.
Two Lindas.
Yeah.
Different stuff. Good evening. What is the main purpose of education? A Minnesota survey found that mastery of core academic subjects for students in K through 8 and mastery of skills for future employment in high school is the primary purpose of education, according to respondents. Fixing social issues came in dead last as education's main purpose. Most Americans agree that the classroom is not the place to implement political issues and agendas. When less than half of Minnesota third graders meet proficiency standards in reading, why advance a political worldview when it is not a main purpose of education? Faribault Public School staff is trained by Midwest and Plains Equity Assistance Center, or MAP. Influence Watch says, quote, MAP trains schools and instructors on racial bias and inclusion while advocating for the teaching of critical race theory at all grade levels, unquote. Influence Watch also quoted MAP director Sina Skelton as saying, MAP's goal is not to close achievement gaps between white and minority students because this only works to evade the analysis of racism and other forms of structural oppression. Rather, school leadership rooted in social justice has at its center tension out of which reform movements grow, unquote. Skelton is on record verifying that the goal of teaching equity is not about closing achievement gaps, because that would avoid focusing on racism and structural oppression. Instead, curriculum rooted in social justice provides the tension to grow reform movements and activism. MAP's two activism terms, ally and accomplice, and this is their publication, Ally and Accomplice, two sides of the same coin, MAP's publication, are stances educators must take to be equity orientated. An ally is a person of privilege, such as a white, middle class, able-bodied, cisgender, this is quote from this publication. White, middle class, able-bodied, cisgender, heterosexual, or Christian that uses their privilege to disrupt oppression alongside people of marginalized groups toward equity and social justice. An accomplice is willing to disrupt the status quo, jeopardizing their comfort, endangering their livelihood, compromising their physical safety, and in some cases, gambling their freedom, such as walking alongside students in the midst of student-led protests or activism. MAP's website confirms, almost there, MAP website confirms that the equity agenda has always been about getting kids to accept divisive concepts that promote racial segregation, student activism, sexual grooming, and eliminating white culture to get social justice for oppressed groups. Is this the agenda, a main purpose? Is this agenda a main purpose of education that district residents support?
Thank you. Next up is Roger Steinkamp.
Thank you. I just wanted to get up because I'm a retired teacher for 10 years, or you could count 20 years if you count the time I spent overseas, and I've worked in other countries and with their professionals too. And now that I'm retired here in Faribault, I thought, well, you know, I hear all this stuff that, wow, teaching wasn't really changed since I quit 5 years ago, retired. And so I thought, well, no better way to find out than to go back into school. So I've been subbing in 4 school districts. And you know what? I don't find any of this stuff. And, you know, I'm schooled. I got my BS degree in vocational, and I got my master's in vocational education. I got my PhD in education. So, you know, I kind of know a few things, a little bit. And I taught in high schools all around Minnesota. And to tell you the truth, I was just subbing today. I didn't see all this. I have a profound respect for the teachers that are in the school today. They're much better than I was. They go through, you know, to be a qualified teacher, what do you need? 4 years plus 5. They're well versed and qualified for what they're teaching. The kids I encounter, they're in the classroom, they respect each other. It's not saying we don't have problems, we do, but okay, we deal with it. And I have an enormous amount of respect for the school board that has to sort through all of these issues, I guess you'd call them. Propaganda is what I'd call it, coming at you, and to make a coherent policy for a school system as diverse as Faribault, which is an asset, I think, to the community. And I've had the opportunity to work in the Middle East and be the Lone Ranger, so to speak, in somebody else's culture. And whether it's been in Africa, Eastern Europe, or in the Middle East, I've always been felt welcome. And yeah, I'm privileged, and I had to acknowledge that. And I learned that very early on when I went overseas. No matter how much I wanted to say that I wasn't part of the privileged class, I was, and still am. And I found out I have to get up every morning, and I look in the mirror, and I say, you know what, Steinkamp, you're kind of a racist. And with God's help, maybe you'll get through the day without doing something stupid. And on the bright side of things, maybe I can get through the day to help somebody else and to appreciate who they are. And so I just want to express my appreciation for the board, the administration, the teachers, and the students that are in this school, and the other school districts around you. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. That brings us to our next item, number 5, recognition, awards, and presentations. 5A is the robotics team. So I believe we're going to have a presentation from the robotics group if they'll come in.
I'll go get them, all right? Matt, I'm going to give you the mic.
Was that why your table's going?
Thank you so much.
You guys don't want you to get run over by the robot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have that list that you went through that I get access to? I tried to take the notes down, but I couldn't get them fast. I tried to. Have a good day. Appreciate it.
Coaches, is this court in your way by any chance? That's no. Doesn't look good for you and I. I think we're right in the target.
Well, thank you for having us aboard. My name is Matt Barron. I'm one of the coaches for the high school robotics team. We're here kind of to show you our robot, Megalodonna is what we call it, and kind of show you some videos on what we do and talk about how we did this season. Before we do that, I'm going to let my team introduce themselves.
I'm Tom Strength. I'm a junior. I'm a programmer and captain of the drive team.
Hi, my name is Aaron Bice. I am in 12th grade, and I helped build the robot.
Hi, I'm Tyler. I'm a junior, and I helped build the robot too, and I also drove it at competition.
Hi, my name is Nathaniel Summers. I'm a 12th grader, and I helped the robot too.
I'm Carl Malika. I'm in charge of building the robot.
All right, so what you guys see here is pretty much 4 months of work. It's 1 month of preparing to learn what our task is going to be for the season, and then it's 3 months to actually build this from the ground up. Everything has to be built from scratch. Everything has to be programmed from scratch. And it's a long process. These kids spend a ton of hours. We work from 6 to 8:30 Monday through Thursday, and then on Saturdays from 9 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. And that's what it takes to have something like this. The one competition we did this year was 10,000 Lakes up in Minneapolis. And we were doing pretty good. Didn't do as well as we wanted, but we were able to crack the top 36 teams in the state to be invited. Went up to state, put up a real good effort, didn't make it to the playoffs, but really proud of what we did this season. And I think we want to show off kind of some of the things that we have here. Let's start with, do you want to explain the climber?
All right, so the climber's simple yet complicated. So it starts off when we get under the rung that we want to hook on, which is just a big bar. This will stick out, and then hook will engage, and then it'll start pulling itself up. It'll line up with the chassis hooks. Those will engage, that disengages, and then the whole thing slides up. And while it's doing this, it is barely swinging like other robots. And it's also extremely hard to get off, which is really good considering you don't want to fall like 3 feet in the air.
So what I have, we actually have a video example of what this does. So if you would, I would like to play this video for you. So there are 3 bars that it has to traverse. And the higher you go, the more points you get.
It's amazing.
So as I was saying, there's the 3 bars that we have to go up on, and the higher you go, the more points you get, which actually puts you higher ranking amongst all the other teams in competition. The next thing we'd like to talk about and highlight is our intake and shooter.
All right. So there's balls we have to pick up for the competition that we, for most of the game, we're going to be shooting into a sort of central apparatus with a 4-foot diameter hole. And so we thought most efficient to do that because we don't just get them from a certain point. There's a certain amount, and they're just everywhere all over the field. So we have an intake on the front that we widened, or we changed the shape of the robot to make sure it was wider so that we could more easily pick up the balls. And then we usually shoot them out the front. Right now we have the shooters disabled, so we might just eject them back out. But there's just a few wheels and some motors, and that's really it. It's pretty straightforward. And there's some switches too to make sure it stops.
Do we target practice? Hold stuff?
The targeting system uses like reflections.
It's going to be
so, but right now it's not moving. We didn't like do anything with the remote. It just has switches that tell it where there's when there's balls there, and it stops the intake. And then when we want to shoot, it'll run it into the shooter, and then we control the speed to control how far it goes.
I have another video to show you exactly what he's talking about. I know it's kind of hard to visualize some of these things, so. Do that video. And actually what you're seeing there is all autonomous, so all that was done just through programming. There wasn't anybody controlling the robot except the robot itself on that part. These kids are amazing. We had a really small team this year. These kids spent so much time and hard work and energy into creating what we have right here that, man, it is really amazing, the kind of kids that we have at this school.
Board members, questions? That concludes your presentation?
that's it.
Board members, questions, comments? Floor is yours.
I do have a question. If a couple of you or each one of you, give us a couple things that you learned by doing this, or what, by being on the robotics team and creating this, a couple things you learned or more or whatever.
I learned your climb ideas can change drastically with only like a few weeks of trying to implement what you're thinking.
I think we learn a lot with the robotics team. It's a really good opportunity to, like, for people who are interested in engineering to get the kind of hands-on experience building, designing, and going through the engineering process of trial and error over and over and over and over again. And then seeing your work, do its thing at competitions and stuff like that. And I think there's lots of leadership skills and engineering experience that you've learned, such as programming and building and designing and stuff like that. So.
Anything I've learned about robotics?
Yeah.
I can shoot that. Okay. Hey, pass down. I learned about the screw gun that just give me time. What I learned about the screw gun is that there are two different ways about this screw gun that you use. Like, if there was this button in the middle part of the screw gun, like on the left side, say, like the button that switches to like pull the screw, push the screw down or pull the screw up. To tell is the button on the left side, if the button on the left side was wide and the button on the right side is narrow, and then that tells to push the screw down. And if the button on the left side is narrow and the button on the right side of the screw gun is wide, then that's pulling them up. So when you you could press the button to say the button on the right is wide and the button on the left side is narrow, and you could just click this wide button to press it to make the button on the left side wide, right? And that should work on that goes for working on the pushing the screws down. But if you push the button on the left side that's wide to the other way, the button on the right side is wide now, and that tells pulling them up.
Nice. Board members, questions, comments?
That was really impressive. Thank you for making the effort to bring that here and show us what you've done. I would have had no idea that you could do that.
So coaches, what do you do with this machine now? The season's over. Are you able to reuse a lot of the parts for next year, or is it totally start from scratch?
We cannot reuse anything on it. about the only thing we can use as some of the programming if we publish it for like a communal use among other people. But any kind of design or anything on this for us becomes obsolete after this year. We have to start brand new.
So are you able to use this for any training type thing, or what really happens? Do you keep it on the team, or what do you do with it?
Yeah, we keep it assembled, so then next year, drivers can practice using this robot. As we get next year's robot mobile, we may start disassembling this one, because you can see there's a lot of lengthy pieces on here that we will repurpose to whatever they need to be. We throw very little aluminum away. We start with, everything is either 10 or 12 foot lengths, and we just keep cutting it down to what we need, and by the time we start throwing pieces away, they're usually 2 or 3 inches long.
That's cool.
So we're very good at recycling.
Community partners? Any businesses in town helping you out?
MRG helps us out. We're always looking for more. So if anybody knows anybody, we're always looking for more partners and sponsors to help us out. So
Great job, congratulations, and thank you for doing the presentation. We appreciate it. So.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, next on the agenda is going to be item 7B, the Deca team presentation. So,
And Matt, can you give the mic to Jared?
It's pretty cool. I want that.
pretty cool.
It's like a good opportunity.
Who else? Mr. Kegler?
Is
Do you want to help, Kathy? Can you just watch your fingers?
Yeah, watch those. Yeah, would that be great? We're all watching you.
Yeah, it's all on TV too. He's got that mic too, Kathy.
It's on. All right, I'm Jared Kegler, and I'm the head Deca advisor, and I brought with me 5 members of my Deca program. And we've had a lot of success this year, just like the robotics program. Our numbers were down this year. But in January, we went and did our district competition. We won 40 medals at the district competition. We had 12 district champions. And I think we brought 28 students to the state competition this year. Had some success there, won some test medals. One of our teams, and I'll let them introduce themselves, ended up winning a 4th place trophy here, and then we also have glass, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I'm going to have each of the members introduce themselves and what events they participated in.
My name is Henry Schonbaum, and at the national competition, I competed in the stock market game with John Cuniff, who wasn't able to make it tonight.
Hi, I'm Joey Steinberg, and I competed in virtual business restaurant at the international competition with Trent Ta.
Hi, my name is Trent Ta, and I also did the virtual business restaurant.
Hi, my name is Paige Ross, and I competed in business solutions at nationals.
I'm Thomas Malika, and I was Paige's partner in the business solutions project.
Okay, so the first thing I'll talk about, this is the 4th place trophy in Minnesota. They all look the same except for, you know, whether you get 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. And this was won by Paige and Thomas at the state competition. That automatically qualified them for the international competition. And they went and competed against approximately 200 teams. I know I just had an article in the newspaper the other day kind of breaking this down, and just to qualify there is quite an achievement out of the state of Minnesota.
but they finished in the top 87 percentile when we got the results back out of over 200 teams. So they performed extremely well, but did not make the finals. And then John and Henry competed in the stock market game. To qualify for the stock market team, first they had to play the stock market game from mid-September to mid-December. And I don't remember exactly how much money you made off the top of my head.
I think it was like 33%.
About a 33% profit above the S&P 500. So they made good money. They finished 7th out of about 1,100 teams. And the top 25 teams from each of Deca's 4 regions advanced to the ICDC conference. And they have to write a 10-page paper and then present it to the judge about their portfolio and what their investing strategy was. And they qualified for the finals, got to go on stage at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, got a finals medal, and finished in the top 16 out of 100 teams that qualified for nationals. And then we have Joey and Trent here, and they competed in the virtual business. To get into the virtual business, there's 2 rounds of virtual business qualifiers for the central region, which Minnesota and 13 other states and Manitoba, Canada are in. And ultimately, they finished as the top team in round 2, which the top 2 teams from each of the rounds from the 4 regions go, meaning the top 16 teams. And I believe you said there were 30,000 teams this year that registered for the virtual business. There's 8 different teams. So you're looking at just about 4,000 per team. So they got there, competed. They can tell you a little bit more about the competition. But ultimately, they ended up in 3rd place. So what you see here is in Deca, they call it the glass trophy. And even though this trophy looks a little more impressive, it's a little harder to fly on a plane around the country and the world. So they give out glass, and the biggest difference is just how high the glass is. So these are awarded, there's 60 events at the international competition, and out of those 60 events, the top 3. So this is 1 out of 180 that were delivered to approximately 17,000 students. So to understand how difficult it is to win glass, it's a very impressive honor. So I'll open it up. Maybe you want to tell them about the competition?
Yeah, so Virtual Business Restaurant, it was like an advanced online simulation where you ran and managed a restaurant. And that was basically like the location of the restaurant based on competitors' locations, the purchasing, inventory, menu, all the things like that, and the design of your restaurant. And at the international competition, we had 2 separate sessions where they gave us a random scenario where we had competitors in different locations from the cities, well, within the city, and we only got 15 minutes to basically come up with our restaurant, our menu, our purchasing, all that, and yeah, and we only had 15 minutes to run a whole year through that simulation, and we were graded off our profit, and we ran that twice for 15 minutes, and then they added it all up, and that was basically how we were placed. And yeah, and we ran that live there.
It was very different from we were practicing like the round 1, round 2, because only one of us could actually run it at the same time. And they gave us also, 3 different scenarios. And yeah, to practice for the actual ICDC. And it was really nice because both of us could be running it at the same time. And we were able to communicate with each other. And yeah.
Sorry, Thomas, after following the videos and the robot and everything, he wanted me to do some gymnastics or something. There will be no cartwheels tonight. Nobody wants to see that.
We know him and Henry are pretty shy. They've never been here before.
Yeah. So I guess if you have any questions, that's kind of what we just wanted to come and show you what we've accomplished this year. So it was a small group, but we did extremely well.
Thank you. Board members, questions or comments?
This is incredible. I love hearing you present about this work over the years. I've loved hearing. I'm a little curious about if you could tell us a little bit about what you do in Deca and what you did in the competitions and how it might relate to the skills you think you'll need sort of in the future as a adult, just adulting, or in your career goals?
I guess I'm starting. So in the stock market game, like Kegler said, we presented over our whole projects. We talked about strategy, research, results, and kind of just gave a general overview to the judge, who was kind of supposed to be a mentor or a boss of ours. And we were supposed to talk about this project we did. I would say from this project, I was able to learn some really great kind of interesting investment strategies, stuff that you wouldn't really think of trying in your normal life. So that was great to see. Also just getting some experience talking with some people with a lot of experience in finance was nice to do. Sure, we'll talk about skills. I think I would say the three that kind of stood out to me most would be communication, problem solving, and then just kind of creativity to think on the fly and look for solutions right away.
That's great.
Yeah, I would agree with Henry with thinking on the fly, especially with our international, our international competition. Definitely thinking on the fly with only getting 15 minutes to do that, and identifying like business opportunities. And we also wrote a 10-page research marketing paper basically at State. And I really enjoyed that because I'm a sophomore and this is my first year doing this with no prior marketing knowledge or classes. So, and well, we also had to take like a marketing exam, and just being able to go through that process of writing a paper like that, a research paper, I think it was just really helpful for me. And just learning all those different things about marketing that I had no prior knowledge of previously. So, yeah.
I think the most thing I can take away is probably communication and problem solving, because this is Joey and I's first year of doing it, and it was we took many hours into it, and it was a lot of trial and error, and yeah, that's basically about it.
I think the skills I will most take away from Deca is public speaking and probably thinking on the fly, like Henry said, and just the importance of teamwork as well, because as an officer team within our Faribault chapter, we were able to work together to come up with some projects for each other, and then as well as Thomas and I's team.
Yeah, I agree. Public speaking is a huge one. Like Henry and I coming here, Deca had really helped with that because we were comfortable and able to talk to you. Prior to our business solutions, I was mainly participated in finance events. I mean, I intend to go to a pre-med route and then a medical school, so that doesn't really apply. But I guess as a doctor, I should be financially savvy. Hopefully that'll be important one day. So, I mean, other than that, just I learned to be personable, and I think that is a huge asset in the workplace.
And one of the things that they didn't mention too is every year we do a community service project. And one of the things we did this year was, I forget the name of the company out of Rochester, but they work with Neighbors Helping Neighbors. So we cleaned up some yards and things like that, and even helped move an air conditioner out for winter and everything like that. So, they're also learning to give back and promoting the program. And Paige also served this year as a state officer representing District 1, which would be all of the southern, the Austin, Owatonna, Mankato, East and West, Pine Island, Waseca, Faribault. So she did a really good job with that as well, which was really cool to see one of our students on the stage. And it's the third year in a row we've had a state officer. So that's pretty cool.
Other board members, questions, comments? Congratulations. 2 questions. You two on the restaurant. So I had lunch today. They had no lettuce. So what were your supply chain variables, and did all the workers show up on time through your 1 year? How many people called in sick, or do they not have that?
Can't tell you that one.
No, gotcha. Well, when you open your restaurant, good luck. Henry, were you able to go only long, or were you short, or were you using puts and calls? Were you buying crypto? What were you doing?
I can kind of cover that. I got to admit, my partner, John, was kind of the brains behind the investing strategy. I was more the presenter, but that I can kind of go. We used a pretty diverse strategy. We had kind of our investing backbone was our long-term, but then we had some quite a bit of option, a lot of calls and puts in the beginning, and that worked pretty well.
So what are you doing here since the market's getting crushed the last 6 weeks?
Just got to hold.
Got to hold.
Got to hold.
Time's your friend, huh?
Yep.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Any board members, anything else? All right. Congratulations. Great job. Okay, this brings us to item 7C, the 9th grade academy achievements and challenges. Stacy Fox and team.
And friends.
And friends.
Why don't you give it to Peter? You want to grab the mic behind, right, Jared?
I don't think I'm going to need it.
Okay.
We might want to keep it away from him.
It actually, the mic helps us when we put it over the TV. So yeah.
Where are we presenting? So
We're presenting to the school board.
I meant the slide.
Oh, it's up here, and your uncle actually gave you directions. Oh, all right, it's up now. All right. So we were going to present.
And Stacy, can you grab the mic? I'm going to talk. Yep. Just so that our TV audiences can hear what you're saying.
We were going to present a little bit more about our 9th grade academy, but then we realized that you've heard a lot about it. And there's something within the academy and that all 9th graders are doing that we're particularly really excited about. And that's within our freshman seminar. And this is a class that kind of came about from the academy and grew with a 7-period day. So at one point it was just our academy kids that took the seminar, and then we took the principles of the seminar and kind of grew it so that our entire school could do it. And so we're going to talk about a project within that, and that's our service learning project. And so we get a lot of questions as to what is the freshman seminar. And to give you the quick version, it's basically all those skills that we expect students to have that are never really explicitly taught. So those organization skills, those collaboration skills that we really want students to have when they leave so they can use them in the workforce and in any post-secondary education. And another one of those skills that we concentrate on is being a citizen of the community. And so when we were imagining that as we were developing this freshman seminar, we had to think about how we would use these skills and assess them. And so we came up with the service learning projects, which is really a method of learning that's been researched quite a bit. And basically what you do is you look within your community, maybe through interviews, maybe just through anecdotal studies, and try and figure out what is something that is going to help my community and what can I do with that. You develop it and then you do it. I mean, it seems really simple, but it's a really good process, and they are going to explain it a little better than I have. And the research behind it is great because it's mutually beneficial between the student, the community, and the school. As a school, we get to highlight the great things our kids are doing. Our kids are learning, how to be part of the community and how to serve their community. And they're also really starting to see that they are part of the community and that they can do really great things for the people around them. And then obviously our community benefits when our students service them. So I'm going to hand it off to these gentlemen because these are teachers within our 9th grade academy who have worked with our students.
Let's go ahead and go to the next slide here. By the way, I'm Peter Tenaglia. So you can kind of see on my little slideshow we've got over here what the kids end up doing. This took basically all of Q1 to prep all of this, and then the last 4 weeks have been us preparing for this meeting. Literally having a conversation with Stacy, we said, when's the due date? It was last Friday to get this whole thing all done. So the big 3 things that we had the kids look at. The first thing was, how are they doing with group work? If you guys have ever played the game Taboo, where you get like a card on there, you got to describe a word, but you can't use the word. Literally had to get kids play that game. We also had them do a Lego activity where they have to build a set of Legos, they set back to back, and then they describe to each other what the Lego looks like. So we're trying to build communication skills, these team building skills. We also had them take what's called a multiple intelligence test of like, how do you learn? What are the best ways that you end up learning? And then the last thing is they had to interview a community member. once again, that took 3-4 weeks just to get all of that stuff set and done. Then before they actually implemented their service learning project, they took, and it's not on the slideshow anymore, but they literally printed out a calendar for the kids and said, for 3 weeks, you're working on this project. You tell me what you're doing for these 3 weeks. So for a full week, they had to, one, interview someone, then figure out, what am I going to do with this project? They had 7 categories they could choose from, which range from youth, Somali community, Latinx community, elderly, the environment, and they had to choose one of these categories to focus their project on. And then on top of that, they used how do they best learn, their multiple intelligence, to then complete said service learning project. Now that you guys have heard all the boring stuff from Mrs. Fox and I, we've got a video of Mrs. Fox put together of some of the kids and the projects that they implemented. Is it okay if we go into that right now?
Yeah.
Or is there something we want to do before that?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
One thing I do want to highlight that you'll see in this video is it's something that each kid could make their own and do something that they felt passionate about, and something that where if a student was uncomfortable necessarily working with others, there's different types of service learning. So some students were doing like advocacy projects. I had a young lady bring awareness to unadopted goldfish, which I had no idea that was a thing, but legit it is. And another student realized that there wasn't enough awareness about parks and what you can do in the parks, and you'll see him talk about it. And so students could do whatever made them feel comfortable to do. You know, it wasn't necessarily something where we threw kids out into the community and were like, go talk to people, go talk to, you know, whoever. And so it really was adjusted for their own comfort level too. I've also been told the audio on this isn't great, so.
Floor, Department Anna Floor wanted to help the environment by like picking up other people's trash, even if it wasn't hers or if it wasn't theirs. So then I got the idea, why don't you just pick up trash and make a sculpture out of it? They both went ecstatic. They were extremely happy to hear about what I was doing. The best part about doing this was knowing that I didn't need a reward because I pretty much rewarded myself by saying you reached your goal, you've done everything that you can, like keep going.
Involvement in ninth graders learning project is to go to various parks around town and put up a collage of them at a community center, so that way people who go to the community center and see this poster know where they can do different recreational activities, whether it's like where there's a playground in town or where there's a good dog walking area, stuff like that, go to different parks. And I can just do that and it's fun because I can say it's for a school project and I can just sit there for a couple hours. It gives kids a chance to be more self-driven, which will actually help them move.
Or I know my Zoner Z, probably found her, Mrs. Frank. We decided to like plant flowers or plant anything around like an elementary school. We got to work with one of the first grade classes. Basically, we just kind of let them clean up the bridges and we pass it on to the season. They started off not just wanting to plant like in our backyards, but then my sister came up with like a whole
And that's on the board book too, so if you want to listen to it again, it was kind of hard to hear, but they have some really good ideas. And we only had a chance to talk to a few students, but there are a lot of really cool projects coming out of our classrooms. That's it.
Board members, questions or comments?
I think this is great. They're learning, kids are learning through doing. They have some choice, voice, some agency, and when they hit bumps in the road, you're making them figure out the next step, right? Not just spoon feeding the answer. So it's nice to see them navigating difficulty, and then they're going to bring those. The whole point, right, with the 9th grade academy is to build those skills up so that as they encounter the skills moving on through high school, they're bringing them with them to help them get through, right, the whole experience. So I think that's great. They seem so young. Listening to them talk, so it must be pretty, I appreciate that you didn't force them to get out there and do something that they were uncomfortable with, but then instead they had to identify something they were interested in themselves. That helps someone else. So, thanks. That was great.
Other board members, questions or comments? Who's the other gentleman with you here on the team?
My name is Nasco. I'm a 9th grade academy specialist. I actually had the opportunity to take 2 of our students to the Jefferson Elementary School so they can do their planting activity for part of their project. And it was actually really nice to see how they got to interact with the staff there and to actually interact with the students at Jefferson. It was very simple, actually. As soon as we got to Jefferson, I took the training wheels off and they just took it from there. Honestly, they were able to interact with the staff. They were able to advocate for themselves. They had their project very clear in mind, what they wanted to do, what they wanted to plant, where they wanted to plant it. It was a really nice experience for me as a spectator.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you all for coming. And I just wanted to follow up one question. You mentioned 9th grade, what's the exact class that?
Academic seminar.
But we also, this is actually something all 9th graders, with the exception of the AVID students, do in their freshman seminar.
And that's partially because of the 7-period day?
Yes, sir.
Wonderful, thank you. No, we need to thank the community for that because that's a big thing. Without their support, we wouldn't have it. So thank you. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, this brings us to item 7D. If you remember right, this was moved up from 12A.
Great.
Please consider the approval of Mr. Nicholas Jurin's employment agreement. You want to come forward? Introduce yourself, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. We'll do a motion. I'll ask for a motion, then we'll look for a second. Any discussion? But you're fine. Come on forward. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion by Ms. Lechtenberg, a second by Ms. Steves. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Welcome. If you don't mind introducing yourself, and then we'll go from there.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Nicholas Jurins. I'm in my 6th year as a principal, and I'm currently the elementary principal at NRHE Public Schools down in Allendale. So I have a wonderful wife by the name of Kelly and 5 wonderful boys that keep us on our toes between the ages of 16 down to 3. So I'm excited for this opportunity to be joining your team, and thank you.
Wonderful, welcome. Board members, questions or comments? Superintendent Sesker, anything you'd like to add?
No, we're just excited to have him. We had a large committee, our interview committee. We had a lot of people involved in that, a lot of Jefferson folks involved in that, and we really are excited to have him on board.
Board members, any questions or comments?
Do you go by Nick?
Yes.
Nick, can you tell us a little bit about what the transition is like? When do you come on board, and what do you do first, and how do you get started?
Well, the first thing we do is we start building relationships. So that started last Thursday. I want to thank the Jefferson staff for welcoming me for the day. Julie did a nice job of organizing everything for me to come and I met with 15 separate meetings with staff members, as well as, and then Tracy invited me to the site team meeting after school. So, and then I'd spend some time here at the district office, met everybody here. So probably met 50 to 60 people on Thursday. Was just in communication with Julie after school today about the next steps, getting in touch with her, but doing everything I can here in the next several weeks so that on July 1 we're ready to go.
That's great. It's pretty exciting.
Mr. Robichaud.
The board has already approved your contract, so this is not an interview question. What do you see as the biggest challenge of an elementary principal in the schools this day?
Boy, which one? I think the biggest challenge is trying to find ways, especially after everything that we've been through the last couple of years, to bring people together and try to use what we've learned to propel us forward. I think in my role, I hear a lot of people saying that we want things to go back to normal, and my take on that is if we learn anything from the last several years, we don't want normal back. We want to continue to learn and grow and propel ourselves forward. So how can we take and extend the learning for our students, extend the learning for our staff on a daily basis?
One follow-up question. What was your training program? What university?
Winona State.
Hey, that's a bonus too. Yeah, yep, bonus, yep.
Thank you. Us Warriors have to stick together. Yes.
Anything else, board members? I don't know if other school districts that you've been in have building reps on the school board or whatever. I so happen to be Jefferson, so sorry. I'll reach out to you at some point, just further introduction or whatever. But welcome and glad to have you here. So
thank you so much.
Welcome. All right, thank you.
Is Drew back there? Jamie, is Drew back there?
He's working on it.
So he's working on the feedback.
Okay, this brings us to 7E, consider approval of Mr. Sean Evans' employment agreement. Mr. Evans, will you come on forward and I'll entertain a motion for approval?
Mr. Chair, I'll so move.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Mr. Robichaud. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Welcome, and if you don't mind introducing yourself, it'd be great.
Yes, I'm Sean Evans, assistant principal at Comparative High School right now. And family, currently my daughter Layla, who's the boss of my family. Yes, as you heard, excited about coming down here. Got to meet a lot of people so far and can't wait to do the work.
Wonderful, thank you. Sorry, I don't know what's going on with these. Thank you. Board members, any questions, comments?
Well, can I ask the same question I asked Nick? Can you tell me a little bit about what happens next for you? We're not making the transition, how you get to know our school and everyone at the team, on the team?
You know, I came down here about a couple weeks ago. Let me tell you, beautiful kids left and right, come running up to me, talking to me, wanting to know me. And I'm like, hey, oh, even when I did my interview process, kids left and right would come up and ask me to come down here. So the next move I have to make is make sure we can know the kids, make sure you know staff, we're gonna move these things together. This is a ship that we're gonna steer. Me and Joe are gonna get this ship right, and we're gonna try to make things go as smooth as possible going on this year. So that's what we're gonna do.
That's great. Yeah, we're thrilled to have you here.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming down tonight.
Thank you, folks.
Yep.
Okay, this brings us to item 8, the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion by Mr. Olson, a second by Ms. Cavalier. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Brings us to item 9, retirements. Our first one on here is 9A, consider approval of retirement of Peter Jacobson. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Lechtenberg, a second by Ms. Steves. Any further discussion or comments?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to thank Mr. Jacobson for his years of service here at Faribault Public Schools. I had the pleasure of working with him for many years at the middle school, and really, I believe he really provided a great learning environment and opportunity for middle school and high school kids, especially taking them out to River Bend. I see the other day he was, they were tagging squirrels and doing fish. I mean, you're talking hands-on learning experience, and that's what Peter was about. And thank you, Peter, for your work here with kids in Faribault.
Any other comments? I too would like to thank Mr. Jacobson. Man, I can tell you, I believe he ranks right up there with personal comments to me from community members on what an outstanding job he did for their kids or their grandkids, and how they often learn a different way, or as Mr. Bellingham said, with their hands and out in the environment and things of that nature. And I attended Superintendent Sesker and I attended a Student of the Month program a few weeks or so ago. I don't believe you could make that one, but on your encouragement, I went. And anyway, Mr. Jacobson's class had 2 students there doing taxidermy. And I mean, remarkable work that they're doing. And so really, really cool stuff going on. So we'd just like to thank Mr. Jacobson for his years of service here in Faribault Public Schools and the impact that he's made on so many young adults. So any further comments or discussion? Okay. We do have a motion by Ms. Lechtenberg, a second by Ms. Steves. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. This brings us to item 9B, consider approval of retirement of Martha Robertson. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Cavalier, a second by Ms. Steves. Any further discussion or comments? Okay, I would just like to thank Martha for her 12 years of service here in the Faribault Public Schools. She was a media specialist at Lincoln, and just wish her absolutely nothing but the best in her future endeavors. So, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Brings us to item 9C, consider approval of retirement of Sarah Stensrud, 26 years of service.
Also move.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham and a second by Ms. Cavalier. Any further discussion or comments?
Mr. Chair, another outstanding teacher with 20-plus years of experience and dedication to the district, and just an outstanding job. So I want to thank Sarah for her work.
I will second that, Mr. Bellingham. Wonderful to see 26 years in dedication to our district and the impact she made on so many young students, and wish her nothing but the best in all of her future endeavors. So,
Absolutely.
hearing no further discussion, we do have a motion by Mr. Bellingham and a second by Ms. Cavalier. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you for that. That brings us to item 9D, consider approval of retirement of Julie Underdahl, 28 years of service here in the Faribault Public Schools. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson and a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. Any further discussion or comments?
Well, go ahead, Courtney.
No, you.
Well, again, 28 years and paraprofessional, in special education, special people there. So I want to thank her for outstanding work and her longevity and dedication to our kids.
Thank you for that, Mr. Bellingham. I would second that, and just wish Ms. Underdahl nothing but the best in her future endeavors, and thank you for 28 years of service to Faribault Public Schools. Hearing no other discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. This brings us to item 9E, consider approval of retirement of Stephanie Zabinski, 16 years of service here in Faribault Public Schools. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Steves and a second by Ms. Cavalier. Any further discussion or comments?
You know, I've known Steph for quite a while, and when I talked to her what she would miss the most, and she, without hesitation, said the kids, and it sounds really simple, but these are the people that care for our children and teach our children, and it's really compelling, and it means a lot. So thanks, Steph, for your service, along with all of the other retirements we've approved.
Any other comments or discussion? Just following on Ms. Steve's comments, Ms. Zabinski, we'd like to thank you and wish you nothing but the best in your future endeavors, and thank you for your 16 years of service to Faribault Public Schools. With that, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Just a general comment. If you take a look at that 12, 26, 28, 16, 26 years of dedication to our students in Faribault speaks well for those individuals. Plus, it's the kind of commitment we're hoping for in the future to Faribault Public Schools. You don't see a lot of people sticking around for 26 years in any organization anymore, and we're very fortunate to have had those people for that length of time working closely with our students, and we hope that individuals that are currently in staff will consider that long-term longevity to Faribault Public Schools as well.
Well said. Thank you, Mr. Robichaud. Okay, this brings us to item 10, finance. Mr. Gerdes or Mr. Nelson, would one of you like to come forward, please? I do know that the report of the minutes from the Finance Committee are there, so if nobody has any questions, but everything's there. If you do have questions, feel free to ask them. If not, it brings us to item 10B1, the Enrollment Report. Mr. Gerdes, you want to walk us through that, please?
I get to sample this new mic here, see if it works. So just an update from the March enrollment report that we presented last month. During the month of April, the counseling office was busy tallying up the fall semester PSEO numbers. They've completed that task, and we've updated the enrollment projections for the fall numbers and carried forward those same ratios into the spring semester. As you can see in the enrollment numbers, through the end of April, we are 38 over budget. And for those of you that don't recall, that's exactly where we set the revised budget at a couple months ago. So as of the end of April, we were spot on. Now that being said, the numbers will drop slightly in May for the PSEO enrollment and maybe some other minor changes at the sites. But we're looking very close to where our budget's today in terms of enrollment.
Board members, any questions or comments from Mr. Gerdes on the enrollment report? Okay, thank you. If you would, please, item 10B2, the financial reports.
So we'll start with the comparative financial report that you guys are used to seeing. Mentioned this last month, also mentioned this at the Finance Committee a couple different times, but if you look at our utility numbers from last year to this year, you can see that our gas bill is up almost 3 times where we were this time last year. And as I mentioned earlier, this will be an increase to our budget in excess of $100,000 when we present the budget to you guys next month, and as well as the electricity costs that are rising as well. A little bit of good news, if you look down at our self-insurance account at the bottom of the report, Again, another great month of claims history in the month of April. Our fund balance for fiscal year '22 in that account is $384,000 plus. So a big increase again last year to this year.
Mr. Robichaud?
Mr. Chair, Scott, I'm sure we've had discussions about this before, and I apologize for my lack of remembering this. But given the utilities, especially electricity, have we had serious discussions about solar connecting? I was at a meeting previous to this, and they were talking about how they're projecting some significant savings by connecting with a solar company in Waseca County.
So as you recall, we are part of a solar consortium today.
That's what I thought.
So that we do save about a penny per kilowatt hour on our usage is what it stands today. So there's a little bit of savings. I think the bigger issue here is obviously the state of the state and the just everything going on. That's really driving these prices.
Yeah, I understand that, but if we were not part of a solar consortium, whatever it is, that electric bill would be higher.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, by several $1,000s.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Robichaud, just to follow up on that, I forget exactly what year it was. I think it was prior to you getting back on the board. We decided to participate as a district in a local community solar garden. And I think they maybe gave us a check for in the range of $60,000, give or take.
Yeah, the one-time check.
One-time check, and then these ongoing savings for many years to come kind of thing. So we are part of it.
Okay, great, thank you.
So moving to the next report, the investment report, not a lot to say here, not a lot of changes. Again, our cash position, we're moving right along with our billing and everything, as you'll see in some following reports. So we're doing a great job there, and our cash balances show that on the investment reports attached. And then on the final report, the analytical report, you can see the flow chart on the first page there. Again, our gap that we had over the winter months has narrowed, and you can see a consistent gap all the way out to the end, to where we hopefully will finish the year very close to where we ended last year in terms of a fund balance. If you flip the page over and you look at some of the revenue and expense dashboards, specifically the revenue one year to date, you can see that our revenue year to date is 67.46, and projected to budget is 45, excuse me, so we're 0.01% off there. So revenue is tracking right where it should be. Again, same with the expense reports. No really issues with the expense reports. Tracking right where they should be as well. And the last page, just point out just a couple items here. You can see that our food service, as I mentioned last month, continues to do very well with that carryover revenue from fiscal year 21. And then you can also see, if you move down to our internal service fund, you can see the net gains there. The one thing I did want to point out, based on our Fund 45, or our post-employment retirement account, which you can see on that page, we have a negative revenue number. And again, that is solely driven by what the market has been doing, Chad, to your comments earlier, to the Deca team. The market has been sinking for the last 2.5 months now, or whatever it's been, which is driving our unrealized gains down in the marketplace, which we have to report as a negative revenue number, which is driving that fund balance in the hole to the tune of $338,000 at the end of April. Now, on a positive note there, last year, when the market was up, we were in excess of $550,000 to the good year to date. So nothing to be quite concerned about, just as any other investment, they go up and down with the wind. So.
Thank you. Board members, questions or comments? Okay, thank you. We appreciate it. This brings us to item 10B3, gifts and donations. This is resolution 22-23. I will read these out, and then Ms. Steves will entertain a motion, and we'll do a roll call. Item number 1 and the next 3 all are part of number 1. Donations for the nest at Faribault High School. Alexandra Boyd, 2 bags of clothing. Greg Boyd, bag of clothing and shoes. An anonymous box of hats, gloves, and a bag of clothing. Number 2, Faribault Chamber of Commerce donation of $400 of chamber dollars for the students of the month, March, April, May 2022 at the Faribault Middle School. Number 3 is the Faribault Chamber of Commerce Agribusiness Committee donation of $1,175 for bus transportation for 3rd graders, farm tour to a local farm. Item number 4 is going to have 3, the next 3 after this are all part of item number 4. Donations for Project ABLE for supplies, transportation costs, bowling ramps, etc. State Bank of Faribault, $100. McDonald's, $100. And Quick Trip Cares, $500. So with that, I will entertain a motion to approve Resolution 22-23.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. Robichaud and a second by Mr. Bellingham. Any other discussion or comment? Once again, I would just like to thank all of these individuals and businesses and community partners for their donations in all of these areas. We greatly appreciate it. So with that, Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
Yep. John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Brings us to item 10C, items reviewed by the Finance Committee and are suggested for board approval. Item 10C1 is consider approval of ALC request for budget addition. Superintendent Sesker will look for a motion in a second first, and then we'll have you do a little more explaining on this. I'll entertain a motion to approve the ALC request for budget addition.
Mr. Chair, I'll so move.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham and a second by Ms. Cavalier. Superintendent Sesker, would you like to share some thoughts on this, please?
Yeah, thank you. At the Finance Committee, we reviewed some of the needs that we were looking at the ALC. We ended up identifying one of the gaps. We probably went a little bit heavy on the reductions in staff, and then as a result, we did have this gap for our work study coordinator. We really need a 1.0 work study coordinator. The workload is there. Plus, we want somebody who's going to be licensed in that, and we do have a person that's licensed down there. So at this time, we are recommending an additional 0.5. It would just change that person from a 0.5 to a 1.0 and actually put that person back to where they were or where they are currently. So we'd like to make that a 1.0 work study position down at the ALC rather than a 0.5 for next year.
Questions or comments, board members?
Is this in our budget? Or what?
Is this an ESSER, Scott? Did we reallocate? I'm going to have to get the expert here for that one, Mr. Olson.
So yes, we are budgeting this out of the ESSER 3 funds, specifically FIN 160. So it'll be the addition into that budget, which is, you recall, one of the federal buckets of money that we have.
Is this good for 1 year or what? Or what?
2 years, yep.
Oh, 2 years. Oh,
Yep, and maybe 3. I mean, we don't know. We'll see what.
But definitely-
we're depending on politicians again, sorry.
ESSER is for 2 more years, right?
That's correct.
So that's, okay.
Yep, that's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Gerdes. Other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, we do have a motion by Mr. Bellingham and a second by Ms. Cavalier. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. This brings us to item 10C2, consider approval of third-party billing contract. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
I'm going to give that to Ms. Lechtenberg. We have a motion by Mr. Robichaud and a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. Mr. Gerdes or Mr. Sesker, would you want to
Yeah, I can
share a
just,
little
real
more on
quickly, so this is Teresa Rome and her contract. She does our third-party billing, and she does an outstanding job and brings in a lot of money for us for our third-party billing, usually in excess of $300,000 a year.
Wonderful, thank you. Other questions or comments, board members? Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. This brings us to item 10C3. Consider approval of nutrition program joint agreement with SevSec. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson and a second by Mr. Robichaud. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. This brings us to item 10C4. Consider approval of nutrition program joint agreement with Discovery Public School. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Lechtenberg and a second by Ms. Cavalier. Any further discussion on this item? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. This brings us to item 10C5, consider approval of food service management company contract. I will entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, I'll so move.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham and a second by Ms. Cavalier. Any further discussion, or Superintendent Sesker or Mr. Gertis, anybody want to speak to this?
Yeah, I'll start with it, and then Mr. Gertis has all the details for it. First of all, thank you to Mr. Gertis and his team for setting up the bidding process. It's incredibly complicated, and it just takes a ton of work, and he just did an outstanding job once again, very thorough. We are very pleased to recommend our food service management company to Sodexo. Again, I see we have two wonderful people in the back that have worked with us throughout the years. If you want to embarrass them and have them come and talk, you might go ahead and do that. But I am going to turn this over to Scott because this is his baby, and just want to really say thank you for all your work on this.
Thank you. Thank you, Todd. And I am going to have them come up here when I am done. And I plan on embarrassing them every chance I can.
Perfect.
I'd like to just first, to follow up on what Todd said, is to thank Ryan Wynn and Sean Peck and Minda Vaninsky and Nora Schultz and Kim Hagen and myself, who made up the committee, who put a lot of time and work into reviewing. I was going to bring it here today, but 4 3- and 4-inch binders of material in excess of 400 pages each. So I just want to publicly thank them. But I am excited to have Sodexo renewed for fiscal year '23. As some of you recall, we had a grant that we were awarded back in 2020 that actually ended at the end of calendar year 21, called the No Kid Hungry Grant. And inside that grant, we presented on that, and Brenda was part of that team. They did a lot of great things about serving hungry, not only kids, but families across this community. And with the new contract with Sodexo, we've redesigned that contract a little bit so that we can incorporate some staff into their contract to continue the work of that grant across the community, hopefully for the next 5, 6, 10 years, as there's a need here in that community. And I'll let them share a little bit more about the vision too that we've talked about some already. But just excited that we can carry on that good work, serve the kids of this district and families as well, right? Because we all know that this goes beyond the classroom. So that being said, in your packet, you'll see some of the timelines, some of the things. I'm not necessarily going to go over all those things. You guys can look at those as you're convenient. But at this point in time, I think I'd like to ask Lori McMahon and Brenda Bain to come join me here at the front, and maybe they want to have a few more things that they would like to say instead of me talking. I know Lori likes to talk, so we'll go.
Well,
told you I was going to encourage you.
You did. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's such a blessing for us to be able to nourish your students so that they can learn. And we're just so excited about the future, so excited about the addition of a community wellness director to our team so that we can just reach more families and just feed more kids. So thank you.
Okay, they hear me talk enough.
One more time.
Yeah,
no, I want to say thank you so much for this amazing partnership and the ability to continue it. I'm really looking forward to taking this contract to the next level. There's a lot of opportunities here in Faribault to feed the kids, not just in school, not just for the school day. And at the end of the day, there's only so many hours that I can be here. So to be able to have another person to be able to advocate for them and to do everything we can to make sure that those students are fed, I think will be a fantastic opportunity.
So just one last thing I wanted to point out, at least those that were on the Finance Committee, I had mentioned that we didn't have state approval yet on Monday during our Finance Committee meeting, but as of 5:06 this afternoon, the state has blessed this contract,
Great.
and so it has all been approved by the Department of Education.
Great.
Thank you. Mr. Robichaud, you
Just a couple of comments. You're to be commended for the work you did during the pandemic with feeding kids when they weren't in school, preparing it, getting out, sending out, and I know that you received that. So thank you for that. It's a commitment. You don't hear any complaints about the food service in the school system, and I have a granddaughter that complains all the time about another school. But you said it's an FY23 contract? Why not for 2 years or 3 years?
So the way the contract works is, so this contract is technically a one-year contract for fiscal year '23, but then as the state allows, we have the option to add 4 more years in addition to fiscal year '23.
Without going out for bids?
Without going out for RFP process that, as Todd alluded to, was a lot of work. So I hope to be sitting here again this time next year with these two ladies having the same conversation.
Okay.
Right at that point, it would simply be a renewal.
Renewable,
It's a
yeah.
contract that you can renew, and then in 5 years, we would go out for bid again, or I should say the district would go out for bid again to determine what their priorities are at that time.
Okay. And that renewable certainly will include some inflationary increases.
Yes.
No, you're supposed to say no. Right?
In any other year, Jerry, we would have said that, but not this year. Right?
Other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Was there other bidders or not?
Yes, Richard. So in your packet, you'll see all the scores for, we had four vendors who bid here at the school, which is quite good considering there isn't a lot of vendors in the state of Minnesota that are able to service a district of this size.
Okay.
Other questions or comments, board members?
I have a question about workers at the school. Do you have enough, are you able to find enough kitchen help for the schools?
No.
Okay.
No, I'll be perfectly honest. It like all other businesses in the community, it is quite difficult. Prior to the board meeting tonight, Lori and I managed to get together to brainstorm some ideas to do over the summer to increase our workforce. Things are, like they said earlier, that we don't want them to necessarily go back to normal, but we do have commitments that we need people for in order to make the NSLP program happen. So if anybody knows somebody who's interested in working, let me know.
Question. So you're looking for people, right?
Correct, yes.
You're looking for people in the general kitchen or whatever that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. What about supplies? Are you getting your food in? Are you?
Because Sodexo is such a large company, we're able to really contract to get the products that we need. There have been some menu substitutions throughout this year, and I foresee them in the future. I think the biggest thing is to not let the students see the disruptions. So we may not have, you said that they didn't have lettuce at lunch, we may not get our lettuce in one day, but we'll have a wide variety of other vegetables for them to choose from. So yes, we are experiencing supply chain shortages, but we're doing our very, very best to make sure that you guys don't know that.
So you guys are big enough where you can order train loads of whatever that you.
I don't have the room to store it, but but we do have the capacity to get those products that we need, yes.
And there was a concern brought up again with the pork issue. I've heard that before. I mean, how would you address that, or if that's a concern for a certain population?
So what we do currently in the district is at pre-K through 5 level, we don't serve any pork products at all. So things like hot dogs or all beef hot dogs. We actually get our ham product is actually made out of turkey, so it's a turkey ham product. However, at the secondary level, 6 through 12, there is an opportunity to serve such as pepperoni or maybe bacon on a bacon cheeseburger. And what we do is we call that out not only on the menu, but also put signage out and a little like cute little cartoon pig so that they can see that that item has pork in it so they can make the best choices for them.
Are they concerned that their food is next to our food? That's a simple way of saying it. Are they concerned about that? That it could...
I know today that they had talked about concerns about pork. In my experience, it's specifically on the foods that they're eating. However, after hearing the comments earlier this evening, I'm definitely going to reach out to our local partners and our liaisons to find out more about what their restrictions are and what we can do to help them.
So are they, again, concerned if you cook something on a grill, then all of a sudden that's taken off and you put non-pork items? Is that a concern, even though they're not touching, but they touched a surface?
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, that is a concern. And we do use different, let's just say sheet trays, things in the ovens. We don't use the exact same equipment for those. But I could also see, since they're not in the kitchen, they don't see what we're doing. We need to let them know what we're doing in order to protect them.
But there's, substitutes of, like for bacon, it's actually turkey or...
Absolutely.
My wife buys a turkey bacon.
Absolutely. And that, again, after the comments made this evening, we will definitely be looking into what we can do going forward to help that student population.
Okay.
Thank you for explaining that.
Yes, absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? Following up on Mr. Robichaud's comments, it really, we're fortunate that Sodexo is as big as they are, and we have the local leadership that we have. We're thankful we have the regional or district leadership as well, but we're really fortunate we have Brenda here. She does a tremendous job. And I remember reading an article during the past year or so, and I'm certain you both know what I'm talking about, but there was a food service group up in northern Minnesota that just basically shut down one day, and they could not deliver the food. And so all the districts up in northern Minnesota were scrambling, trying to figure out how we're going to make this food, where are we going to get the food. So just following up on Mr. Robichaud's comments about the partnership you've provided through these last couple of years and into the future here. But the last 2 years have been very trying, and we just thank you for that. So appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any other comments or questions, discussion? Okay, hearing none. We do have a motion by Mr. Bellingham and a second by Ms. Cavalier. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, the next page plus item 11 is the policy committee. I don't know if you folks have gone home since our last meeting or what's going on here, but item number 11A is, well, first of all, let me backtrack. Item number 11, just policy committee minutes. Anybody from the policy committee, would you like to speak to anything from your previous meeting or what we've got in front of us here?
I don't think that we're going to do a lot of these groups. I think we're at the end, pretty much. Big groups? Yeah. Is that true?
She might need a mic. So, do you want it? No. Okay. I'll give you mine if you need it. So, but yeah, we're getting there. It's, you're right. We are going through the rotation with the larger groups because of the new policy procedures for MSBA. We can do chunks of policies because, again, some of the staff up at MSBA have done just a great job of vetting these pieces. And it doesn't take 2 readings, it takes 1 long motion. And it's all mainly statute changes and things like that. So, yeah, so Kathy has been at the helm of this and really making the policy committee work pretty hard. So good job.
Any other comments, policy members? Okay. Item 11A, consider approval of the following policies. We will take all these in one group. Policy 536, Special Education Records and Records Retention Policy. Policy 703, Annual Audit. Policy 704, Development and Maintenance of an Inventory of Fixed Assets and a Fixed Asset Accounting System. Policy 709, Student Transportation Safety Policy and Notification Forms. Policy 720, Vending Machine Policy. Policy 721, Uniform Grant Guidance Policy regarding federal revenue sources. And Policy 730, Payroll Periods. I will entertain a motion to approve those policies.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson and a second by Ms. Cavalier. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Item 11B, the following MSBA policies have changes that are non-substantive and can be adopted in a single action to reflect the changes. Policy 204, School Board Meeting Minutes. Policy 205, Open Meetings and Closed Meetings. Policy 208, Development of Policies. Policy 305, Policy Implementation. Policy 427, Workload Limits. Policy 504, Student Dress and Appearance. And Policy 521, Student Disability Non-Discrimination. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson and a second by Ms. Cavalier. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. This brings us to item 11C. Minnesota School Boards Association has discontinued its service manual. These updates address this change and update other references. The following MSBA policies can be adopted in a single action to reflect this change. Policy 101, Legal Status of School District. Policy 103, Complaints - students, employees, parents, or other persons. Policy 203.5, School Board Meeting Agenda. Policy 207, Public Hearings. Policy 210, Conflict of Interest. Policy 301, School District Administration. Policy 302, Superintendent. Policy 303, Superintendent Selection. Policy 304, Superintendent Contract. Policy 401, Equal Employment Opportunity. Policy 402, Disability Non-Discrimination. Policy 403, Discipline, Suspension. Policy 408, Subpoena of District Employee. Policy 419, Tobacco-Free Environment. Policy 514, Bullying Prohibition Policy. Policy 516, Student Medication. And Policy 520, Student Surveys. With that, I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Ask him to repeat them.
We have a motion by Ms. Lechtenberg and a second by Ms. Steves.
Ask him to repeat them.
There is a motion to repeat this.
We have a motion on the floor
Wow.
for approval. Do we have any further discussion?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
He's giggling over there.
Item number 11D, MSBA has done a thorough review and revision of policy forms. The following policy forms can be adopted in a single action to reflect these changes. Policy 404, Employment Background Checks. Policy 406, Public and Private Personnel Data. Policy 414, Mandated Reporting Child Neglect. Policy 416, Drug and Alcohol Testing. And Policy 806, Crisis Management Plan. I will entertain a motion to approve these changes.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson and a second by Ms. Cavalier. Any further discussion on these policies? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. This brings us to item 11E, consider approval for rescission of the following policies. Policy 500.02. I'd hate to see what policy 500.01 is. 500.02, student marital or parental status. Policy 502.5, student safety. Policy 503.1, student government. Policy 503.2, student organizations. Policy 503.4, social events. Policy 503.9, meals and lodging dash student trips. Policy 504.8, insurance dash student. Policy 505.2, assurance of mastery policy. Policy 505.3, PER policy statement. Policy 701.0, parental accommodation of disabilities with administrative procedures. With that said, I will entertain a motion to rescind those policies.
Mr. Chair.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson and a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. Any further discussion?
Just to make sure you clarify, a lot of these policies are outdated. They're no longer part of our processes or policies or in statute, or they're all rolled into other policies that are currently on.
Mr. Bellingham, were you going to make a motion?
No.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I get a point of personal privilege here, I just want to thank Kathy Zabarel again, as Mr. Sesker said, for her organization and things. She goes through these with a fine-tooth comb and is updated by MSBA and makes our committee meetings flow pretty smoothly and easily. So again, thank you, Kathy, for all your work on that. So it's,
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you, Ms. Zavril, and also thank you to the policy committee for all the time and effort on it. This brings us to item 12, other matters, 12A. This was previously 12C, so everybody's following along. 12A, consider approval of Resolution 22-25 to rescind the termination and non-renewal of the teaching contract of a probationary teacher. I will entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, I'll so move.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham and a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. Superintendent Sesker, anything you'd like to share on this?
No, we just, as you saw the retirees and some of those other late resignations, we have the opportunity to bring a couple of these non-renewals back and rescind those non-renewals and bring those teachers back.
It's great.
Thank you for that. Any other discussion, board members? Hearing none, we do have a motion by Mr. Bellingham and a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call for Resolution 22-25?
John Bellingham,
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier,
Aye.
Leanne Lechtenberg,
Aye.
Richard Olson,
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud,
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Resolution passes 7-0.
Thank you. This brings us to item 12B, consider approval of 5-year leave of absence for Gabriel Cordum. I will entertain a, let me just ask here 1 second. This is on here for the approval to grant the leave of absence.
That's correct. That's the way the wording is.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to approve the leave of absence, the 5-year leave of absence for Gabriel Cordum.
So moved.
We have a motion by Ms. Steves. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ms. Steves, a second by Mr. Bellingham. Superintendent Sesker, would you like to walk us through this and if there's a recommendation from yourself or from district leadership?
Yeah, and you can certainly call Nicole up too. We, at this time, just so you know, this would be the second 5-year leave of absence in the last, I think, is it 11 years, Nicole? 11 or 12 years? Yeah, right around there. So it is a pretty tight timeline for those. We're okay if the board doesn't want to do that. It sometimes is a little difficult when somebody does take leave and they come back and there's somebody that's in that position. I know a number of years ago we decided that we were trying to limit the number of leaves that we were approving just for that purpose. Gabe's a great teacher, there's no doubt about that, but we do have some concerns about having another 5-year leave within this amount of time.
Thank you, Superintendent Sesker. Board members, questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Robichaud.
That's
Oh,
right.
go ahead.
Richard. No, go ahead.
Yeah, trying to figure out how this, 5 years, and then this, we hire somebody, right, to replace this individual, then this person comes back, then what happens?
Then they Nicole, you want to help? I just don't want to mess this up. The person who is on leave, any person who's on leave, when they come back, then they would then replace the least senior person in that position, or Nicole, you want to, this is a good segue for Nicole.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. So, once a person is on a leave and they return to the district, they have the rights to come back to the position in which they are qualified for, where the least senior employee holds the position. So, in this case, Mr. Fordham wouldn't necessarily go back to the high school in a math position. He would be placed within a 612 math position where the least senior person currently is teaching.
So when a person leaves education for 5 years, things change. In fact, it changes every year, it seems to be. Then all of a sudden, if they're out of education, which I'm assuming, I don't know,
Yeah.
then they, come back.
Yeah, quite honestly.
I'm trying to get,
Yeah.
how does that?
I'm just trying to, if I can give you a little bit of guidance, I think that Ms. Yoka and I are both suggesting that if you're always able to approve the leaves, but we don't know if we need to approve this particular leave of absence. We have to put it on the agenda because the statute says that the board has to give it the thumbs up or the thumbs down, so it's up to you guys to make that vote on that. But right now, I won't speak for Ms. Yoakum, but at this time, I would not be in favor of the leave, but that's up to you guys.
So, Mr. Sesker and Mr. Rochelle, we'll go to you. I'm just trying to follow up on this line of questioning here. Does every leave of absence come to the school board, or is it because this is a second 5-year leave of absence?
Every leave of absence that falls under the statute, a 3 to 5 year extended leave of absence, comes to the school board for approval.
Thank you. Mr. Rochelle?
A couple of questions. Number one, what's the possibility of finding a replacement for this person?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say. Right now, we're having a hard time finding elementary Phi Ed teachers, so a high school math teacher would be problematic.
Very difficult, yeah. And you say this is a second 5-year leave, not of this individual, but of somebody else?
No, this individual.
Of this individual? This is a second 5-year leave?
Yes, so this individual was out for 5 years, came back for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Right. 2 years, and now he's requesting to be out for an additional 5 years.
Then with that statement, then, I didn't know about the same person. I don't think I know this person. If you don't want to be in education, then get another job. Just don't try to screw our system up. I don't know if that's too harsh. I don't know this person.
Yeah.
But
He's a great person, really, really good teacher, and Leanne probably has worked with him in the past.
I've heard wonderful things
Yeah.
about him.
Yeah, he's a wonderful person. Yeah, just
Great teacher.
Mr. Bellingham?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I believe the statute's A122.46, correct?
Yes.
Nicole, you and I worked on these many years when I was in the teacher group as well. It's provided in statute for, and I'm just informing the board of this, provided in statute so that teachers have mobility in case they have maybe a little change in a career or a family situation or something like that, and they still are expected to continue licensure if their license is up within that time for the number of clock hours, et cetera, like that. With that said, if I could, with permission of Mr. Sesker and Ms. Yoakum and the chair, I'd like to ask Mr. Benty, being the high school principal, seeing this as a high school teacher, your thoughts. I know I'm kind of putting you in the spot again, but I'm just looking at the continuity of a particular department and how everything flows, and replacing the person, and when a person on leave comes back, how all this stacks up. So if I could just have your opinion, if that would be okay.
So you're asking about when a person comes back from a leave, correct?
I just want to know right now, to grant the leave, what that does to any sort of continuity or things within the high school, the programs that he's involved in, the classes that he teaches.
Yeah, so it would, with this current individual, it would create ripples across 3 different departments, because this person teaches in 3 different areas. And then, depending on how long they're gone for, it does create issues when they want to come back, because like Nicole said, I might have to let a tenured teacher go, or I might have to let a really good teacher go to bring this person back for their rights that they have, so.
Mr. Robichaud.
Mr. Chair, and as I understand, they could come back any time during that 5-year period. So they could be gone for a year, come back. I'm concerned about the fact that this individual's already had a 5-year leave, comes back for 2 years, and takes another 5-year leave. And I know there's no way of predicting it. And I do not know this individual either, Mr. Olson. But he could come back in 2 years, take a 5-year leave again, so we could cause problems for the high school, even more so in the long term. But they can come back any time during that 5 years, is that right?
That's correct. They can come back. They just have to inform the district by February 1st of the prior year that they're intending to return for the following year.
Okay, thank you.
Following up on that, do they have to come back for a full year, or can they actually come back start of 2nd semester and disrupt that?
Has to be for a full year. They could resign. If they come back that following year, they could resign mid-year. But when they come back, they inform us they're intending to come for the school year.
Is there language in our agreement where we regularly grant a second 5-year? And somebody said something about 11 years or 13 years or something.
No, it doesn't have any language to that. I just know that when I came on board and when Nicole and I started, we really wanted to limit the number of leaves of absences. Of course, allowing the family leaves and all the other leaves that makes sense to do. But just because of the reasons you guys are talking about right now, it gets really difficult when you have somebody come back and they have to bump another person off the list, and then sometimes we're stuck trying to rehire.
This is my 8th year on the board, and I don't remember, not that I necessarily have the greatest memory, but I don't remember ever seeing a second 5-year leave of absence in front of us. I don't believe, but I could be wrong on that, so, but it doesn't ring a bell. So, other questions, comments, suggestions? Yes, Mr. Wilson.
What happens if the board says no?
Then the 5-year leave would not be granted.
Then what does this person?
They would come back next fall and teach for us.
Just start just like a regular teacher?
Yep.
Or resign if
Or he can quit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we hope not, because he's really good, like I said.
Yeah, I'm just...
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I mean, this is a balancing act, right, of setting precedent. You really have to take the person out of it, good, bad, or indifferent, however they are. They're an employee of our district, and at the same token, you want employees that want to be here. Clearly, in his letter, he's struggling with wanting to be here based on his words, not my words. And so this is one of those balancing acts, if you will. And so, other conversation or discussion? Yes, Mr.
Yeah, that's why I didn't know this guy, so he could be, from Mars. It's just a continuity. I didn't know about the 5 years, 2 years, another 5 years. Then I guess that should you be in teaching? They say, I do not know this person. So,
Any other, Mr. Robichaud?
No, I was just going to say, based on the administration's recommendation, I would move to deny the...
So we have one, the way we sit right now is the motion is consider approval of 5-year leave of absence for Gabriel Cordo.
I'm sorry.
We do have a motion by Ms. Steves.
Okay.
We do have a motion by Mr. Bellingham.
Second.
A second, I'm sorry. I believe we will take a vote on this now. If it passes, it passes. If it fails, that is just...
Leave's not granted.
The leave is not granted.
I apologize, I didn't recall.
so Cliff, so a yes vote means he gets his extension.
Gets his 5-year leave of absence.
Right,
That's, you're voting on that motion.
okay, and then no, okay.
And since we've had a motion and a second, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're in favor of it, or it doesn't?
No, it's just to-
It just
Just for
motion
Just
and
move
discuss.
forward.
To put it on the table for
Yep.
discussion, right?
Yep, thank you. Okay, so any other further discussion or comments regarding this? It's a learning experience for all of us here. Okay, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of granting the 5-year
Could-
leave of absence?
Could I request a roll call?
You can, yep.
Just to
Yep.
clarify the vote.
Yep. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
You want to do a roll call?
You can do it either way. You can do the vote first, then roll call after
Yeah.
that. Yep.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. All those in favor of granting this 5-year leave of absence, please signify by saying aye. Opposed?
Nay.
No,
Nay.
Ms. Stevens, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham,
Nay.
Courtney Cavalier,
Nay.
Leon Lechtenberg,
Nay.
Richard Olson,
No.
Jerry Robichaud,
Nay.
Cassie Steves, nay. Chad Wolf,
No.
resolution passes
Yeah, so
Fails.
it fails
0.
07.
0-7. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your feedback, Superintendent Sesker and Ms. Yocum and Mr. Venti.
Thank you, Mr.
Appreciate
Venti.
it. This brings us to item 12C, consider approval of Resolution 22-24, Minnesota State High School League membership renewal for the year 2022-2023. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. This document is in front of us, and I'll open it up for any further discussion. Mr. Olson?
Yeah, on this one here, I know that we have to approve this because our teams won't participate, but there was a recent vote, and maybe John can fill in the blanks, but the high school league denied, and maybe we can, I don't know if we can table it to get an answer of boys soccer, volleyball. And I'm not saying that we're going to start a team here. I'm just saying over 300 districts. I'm trying to figure out why they would deny starting boys volleyball.
Yeah, and I can give you a brief synopsis on that. We have a region and a conference, and then the conference and the region, superintendents and activities directors vote on that piece. Actually, it's the activities director. Superintendents don't get a vote. But the activities directors vote on each of those different components, and then they meet at the state level for the representation for each of those votes. And then those votes are represented at the state level, and the activities director in the various regions. I can give you a couple reasons why they voted it down. Number one, it's another activity which will cost the district money, and you know the financial situation of all the districts that are in the state, what they're facing. There's also a Title IX issue. If you add a boys volleyball team, which boys sport do you cut? And there are other various issues too, as far as smaller schools. If they, like a Big 9 conference, we have some larger schools that could probably do it. Faribault would have to pull athletes from other sports in order to have that, and sometimes you want, if you're in a Big 9 conference, you want to offer similar or as many sports as all the other teams do in the Big 9. So there's a lot of different variables for rationales for why not, and that was the conference, or the Big 9 conference's rationale for it.
Again, to the point, I'm not saying that we as Faribault are going to start a team, but, you know, the metro teams, I mean, they're within miles of one another. Just to say denial from International Falls to Albert Lee to Minneapolis. You know, if you want to start a team, then start a team. If you've got enough students, I don't know if we have or not a full team.
There's club teams out there that play all the time.
So it just, but again, just a blanket, you know, we're not going to have it. Maybe the metro schools can, and they can play, and then we say, oh, gee, that's neat, maybe we'll do that, or I don't know. But just the blanket denial.
Was it the high school league that voted it down, or the Big Nine?
High school league.
Okay.
Yep.
Mr. Bellingham?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. So it does seem maybe it's quite questionable, but I believe that's why they call it the Minnesota State High School League, from Austin to International Falls, from Winona to Worthington. So all regions have a vote on doing this, and as Mr. Sesker said, to me, it would be an extra expense. It's Title IX, so you either add another female sport, or you lose another male sport to be equitable with Title IX. So I believe, from what I've read and have heard, I believe this topic has been researched and has gone in a pretty deep dive. I don't believe anybody took any vote lightly. I think, and I believe it was a fairly close, very, very close vote, et cetera. Yeah, one vote or whatever, much like when we added other sports, et cetera, to that. So I think you have to believe in and trust the process of how they received input from all the regions, Northwestern region, Northeast, Southeast, Southwest, et cetera, metro area, et cetera, as to, for this particular item. It might come back up in a year or two and maybe pass at that point. But at this point, I don't think that's whatever. And I really don't want to get hung up on a volleyball issue when we have a motion for to approve to, again, join the high school league, which provides us with the structure of students being eligible in state tournaments and district tournaments, region tournaments, et cetera, so like that. So it's...
Mr. Rocha?
No, I'm just going to call for the question.
Again, I thought it would be the opportunity for the high school league for students to participate in all activities. I think this goes into theater and all that, right? Those kind of activities. Right, so anything after our core curriculum, right, then it seems like it's a denial.
I can't speak to that, Mr. Olson. I do know that there are certain, I remember years ago when they were a big push to make clay target shooting a state high school league sport versus club and whatnot, and that passed, but oftentimes it takes several attempts and more people in kind of a more grassroots effort. As Mr. Bellingham and Mr. Sesker spoke, I think it failed this time by one vote. I think the last time we did, it was a fair amount more than one vote. I think the momentum is coming in the way you're thinking, at least from what I've read. No guarantees. I don't know how people will vote later, but I hear what you're saying.
Mr. Chair, it's all very relevant discussion, and it's very important discussion. But I'd like to call for the question, please.
Okay. With that said, we have a motion by Mr. Bellingham and a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. All those in favor of, we'll do a roll call. Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
So, Mr. Chair, may I qualify? Did Dr. Robichaud, did you make a motion to call a question?
Mm-hmm.
So we end debate, but if debate is done, we could do that. Otherwise, we need to vote on, we need to deal with the call for the previous question.
So what do we need to do? I'm sorry.
Well, if Dr. Robichaud made a motion to call the question, meaning debate ends.
Yep.
So we need to vote on, have a second and vote on the call where debate ends, where there'd be no more discussion, should I say, not debate.
Okay. So do we have a motion to, I'm sorry.
Dr.
He made
Robichaud?
the motion to call the question.
Second.
We need a second to call the question. I'm sorry.
Okay.
There you go,
Now we need
second.
a vote on.
That's great. We do not debate it, to discuss, it's not amendable, so, and it requires 2/3 majority, so we require 5 out of our 7.
To end the discussion.
To end the discussion.
Okay. All those in favor of calling the question, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Sounds like 7 out of 7.
We got it. Okay.
Okay, so we called the question. So now, Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call for the resolution 22-24?
Sure. John Bellingham,
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier,
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg,
Aye.
Richard Olson,
No.
Jerry Robichaud,
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Resolution passes 6-1.
Okay, thank you for that. This brings us to item 12D, consider approval of the Baker Tilly survey. I will entertain a motion to approve the survey.
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Cavalier, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Bellingham with the second. Further discussion on the Baker Tilly survey that we saw a couple weeks ago, and Superintendent Sesker, is there anything you'd like to add here?
No, there's some timely literature that came out. Chad sent some things out, and then also it came out of your MSBA manual, and or maybe it was Ed Leadership. I can't remember which one it was I was reading. But the two main companies who do the surveys, their scientific surveys, were Baker Tilly and Morris, and they have created this document that really, I think, does a good job of outlining the reasons why a survey is important in a community. You're going to put all that time and effort and all those resources. You at least want a pulse of what the community is going to be doing before you go out there for a vote, whether it's not approving a levy vote or going to the voters to approve a levy vote. You just need to know the data.
Mr. Olson?
Yeah, I've stated last time we're going to spend tax money to raise our taxes. I just don't see, I don't think we need a survey. I think people, they email the board, give us a call, even speak in front of us. To me, that's a survey. We want people to contact us, and not some firm that's outside our district. And again, I've had a couple calls saying, you're spending tax money to raise our taxes. I said, that's basically what it is. Even though what, 25,000 or whatever, is still, it is tax money. So I'll be voting no on this.
Thank you. Other questions or comments, discussion?
I was really conflicted about this, and I had several conversations. That article that came out was really timely for me. Someone told me to hire an expert, and I don't know my personal capacity, my husband's personal capacity, they might be very different. So I need to know, our community has said over and over and again, ask us. Keep us informed and ask us. So while it is spending a lot of money, I think I have to support it, because I want to know what Tom, Dick, and Harry has to say and what their capacity is.
Thank you, Ms. Steves. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Robichaud?
I want to echo what Ms. Steves is saying, is that, I'd like to find out too what the community says. And Mr. Olson, I don't believe the survey is just to ask, should we have a levy or should we not have a levy? Will the district support it? I believe it's more encompassing than just asking for dollars. It's going to, as Ms. Steves says, going to tell us what the people in this community think about the school district. And I think we can use that as a very significant tool as we take a look at what we should be doing in this district, not only for taxes, but for other things as well. So I would support the survey.
Thank you, Mr. Robichaud. Ms. Lechtenberg?
This might be buried in the article, but I'm wondering how many years the results of the survey is good for.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I would say it's only good for the period of time until you take the next survey, because then you can kind of measure, you've got your base, and actually from, I think the first time we did that was, we've done a couple of these. Whenever we did the first survey and followed up with the second survey and now the third survey, that's keeping records within the district to follow to see what the perception of the public has been for the school district and some of those questions that we've asked of the district. So I would say it's as valid as the next survey. And then also I would highly recommend, you won't do this until next January probably, I would do a post survey if you do decide to run a referendum this fall. And then that can give you more data as to whatever the reaction was to the levy or the operating levy that fall. Why did it fail? Why did it pass? What are these things that happened as a result? Was it the perception of the community that we've got the CRT going on? Was it the perception of the community that we are working towards an equity movement that everybody loves? Or all those different questions are out there, and it changes. You know, the education environment changes all the time. And but I think the answer to that question would be the next survey, would be able to give you the data to see whether or not something has changed.
So whether we run a levy this fall or next fall, the data would hold true for both?
Yeah, yep.
I think, Ms. Lechtenberg, part of it though is you can customize the survey. And so when Kelly was here talking to us about how they phrase some questions and whatnot, part of that's going to be, what is the levy used for, right? If it was for a 7-period day, which we have, it might, guide towards that. How important is that? If it's towards a technology levy, it would probably guide towards that. If it was for buildings of some sort or repairs, it would likely guide towards that. So I think all of those questions can be very, very customized, and I think that's part of the whole survey process is the district agreeing to what questions do we want asked based on what are we looking to raise money for, what is that actual purpose of the referendum or the levy.
So when do we determine the actual purpose?
Well, we're going to hear from the Ehlers representative here shortly, right? The survey is the survey. That's one piece. It doesn't determine if we do go forward for a levy or not. Certainly, my belief only, but the survey, if the survey said there's not enough support out there to increase the local investment in our schools, quite frankly, then we've got our work cut out for us on showing everybody why we truly do need it based on previous budget cuts and what's coming down the path. But we will, by July, we need to have something to the state exactly laying out what that looks like, right? Because there's a period of response time and approval time at the state. Is it the end of July we need to approve something?
Yeah, you have till about August 15th, I think, is a deadline for that. But I would say you want to get rolling. Well, we're already doing some work about some of the what-ifs that occur. But you do have to have the ballot language approved by, I would say, no later than July 25th.
So I think at our last meeting where we talked about this, we should be expecting something from leadership sooner than later regarding all of the cuts that have been made over the last several years and the projected cut, a dollar amount that we saw if we don't get any new funds. I think everybody would agree the big caveat right now is the legislature. Are we going to get something or aren't we going to get something? And knowing that that's a variable and a real variable and potentially a small one, potentially a large one, right? And we just don't know yet, so. Does that help a little bit?
I'll make it more confusing, yeah.
Mr. Chair, maybe in a simple mode here, maybe we need to reflect back to earlier in the meeting of our 5 Deca students standing there. I believe each one of those groups said, we did analysis and research. We consulted experts within their project. We have a big project here. So we're asking this firm to go out and survey our community so that we understand what the community is willing to support and where we're at. And so I think we could learn a lesson from our Deca students here of let's do it right and make sure we consult experts and do some real good analysis here.
I mean, nobody goes out for a levy to hope it fails. There's a tremendous amount of time, effort, cost, both in terms of dollars and in terms of just human capital. And so I think if this board approves to go out for a levy, we want to do everything that we can to make sure that we're spending or we're trying to move forward with a levy that our community will support and that it matches their wants and desires and whatnot. So, other discussion, comments? Okay, so we do have a motion by Ms. Cavalier and we do have a second by Mr. Bellingham. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the Baker-Tilly survey, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes 6-1. Thank you.
Can I have a roll call?
Sure.
Sure.
Ms. Steves, please do a roll call.
John Bellingham,
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier,
Aye.
Leon Lechtenberg,
Aye.
Richard Olson,
No.
Jerry Robichaud,
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf,
Aye.
passes 6-1.
Thank you for that. The next item on here is item 12E, consider approval to schedule a work session meeting for July 12th, 2022 at 5:30 PM. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'm checking my schedule.
I know, second.
Everybody's checking.
I'm not going to be here.
Thank you for rubbing that in.
Where are you going to be, clarification?
You have to ask Mr. Minty about that.
We know where you live, though.
Do we have a second? We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham. Do we have a second?
Yes, second.
We have a second by Ms. Cavalier. Any further discussion on this?
Just a question, we're moving it to Tuesday, July 12th?
That's what I was going to say. July 12th is a Tuesday. Did we want the 11th?
I think it was supposed to be a Monday, wasn't it? Yeah, I think it was meant to be a Monday.
Monday, the 11th?
Somebody want to withdraw their motion?
Well, Mr. Chair, I'll amend my motion to have the date as July 11th, 2022.
Okay, so Mr. Bellingham has amended his motion. Ms. Cavalier, would you like to second that amended motion?
Yes, I will second
Okay.
that amended motion.
Okay. Any further discussion on that?
Why are we adding this? What purpose?
It's to discuss the levy, upcoming levy, and give you the data that you need to do to make a vote.
If we feel we don't need it, we can always cancel it.
Yep.
It's just to get it on the calendar.
Do you want the fun stuff now?
Sure, give us the
Okay.
fun stuff.
So I've amended the motion, so now we need to vote on amending the motion. So we
Thanks
have
for
a,
being
we
here,
have a motion and a second, correct, Mr. Chair?
Correct.
To amend the motion, okay. And if we're done with debating, or with the discussion, we can do that, and it is amendable, and then we need a simple majority to pass the motion.
Point of order.
So I need to vote on the amendment first.
Because I amended it to go from July 12th to July 11th.
All those in favor of
A
amending?
point of order on this is that, I know John knows a lot, but do we really have to go through this?
Well, we've been going, it'll
I know, it just,
20 seconds.
this is
It's the right
taking,
thing to do. We try to be as proper as we can. So we'll entertain all those in favor of amending the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. Now, we will entertain a motion.
We already have the motion in a second.
The motion
Just
is
need a
now,
vote.
now reads July 11th.
Okay, and we do have a motion by Mr. Bellingham and a second by Ms. Cavalier. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
no.
Okay, so that vote to schedule the July 11th work session passes 6-1.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to item 12F. Consider approval to change the July 18th, 2022 school board meeting to July 25th, 2022 at 5:30 PM.
So now we're in July 20th.
And July 25th is a Monday.
Yes.
I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Again, why? Because get a 2-week,
Yeah, give a little more time between, that's it.
okay.
Yep.
I will not be here on the 25th. I will be traveling. I don't know exactly where I'll be at that time, so I do not anticipate participating remotely, as I can't tell you what public place it is.
This might be an issue too, because I definitely cannot be here in person. I can work on making sure I'm available virtually, but I won't be here in person, so.
Okay. Anybody else, any issues?
I'll be here. A clarification, if the chair and Ms. Cavalier are not here, can they participate remotely now?
They cannot vote remotely now.
Oh.
Okay.
Yep,
But they can
they
participate
can participate.
in the discussion, but
Yeah,
can't vote?
they can't vote.
Thank you.
Are
Right.
we-
Well, they said, I think when the order from the governor went out. Let me go back and double check that.
Could you clarify?
Yeah, I'll have to get that information.
Back to the old public,
Yeah, the old one.
the old public rule? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my understanding
But I was
was.
in a public.
Was the executive order, then you rescinded?
Yeah.
It's
We'll
executive?
we'll find that out. Okay.
Yeah, let me get it to you so I get the exact wording from Minnesota School Boards.
I am not 100% sure I will be here either that day.
Oops.
So we might need to think about this.
Why don't we table, well, the motion's on the floor.
Well, Mr. Chair, we do, even with 4 here, we still have a quorum.
You still have a quorum, yep.
That's correct.
Yep, and somebody remote may be able to participate, we'll find out, so. Okay, we do have a motion by Ms. Steves and a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. As long as we know that we think there'll be 4 here, that's a quorum, and we can move forward.
Now, that's a regular business meeting. Like
That would be a
regular business meeting.
Correct. Any further discussion?
Be here?
So are we better off voting and approving the change or tabling this until we know we can pull everybody together? I just want to make sure. If we're voting on something is like, are we making votes on levy decisions on July?
Oh,
We'll
yeah, you
have done-
probably will, yeah.
We'll have done that before.
Or you could have a special board meeting afterwards, too. If you come to the, hypothetically, if you're at July 25th and you're not comfortable with the group that's here or whatever, you can always say, I'd like to have a special board meeting on August, whatever.
Okay, so why don't we move forward, and then if we find out everything falls apart, we'll revisit this at another meeting?
That works. Any other discussion?
One question, I assume that our new superintendent, heir apparent, will be here on the 25th.
The next day is my wife's birthday, but I'll be here on the 25th.
Let's change the meeting to the 26th.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes 6-1. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is 12G, the Ehlers presentation. I apologize for making you wait until 8:05 to give your presentation, so come on forward, please.
8:05.
Could we have a 5-minute recess?
We can. We just need a motion.
Motion for 5-minute
You can just
recess.
you can just declare a recess for 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll declare a recess for 5 minutes. We will be back at 8:10, and thank you. Drew, are you good? Okay, thank you, everybody, for sticking with us for the 5-minute recess. We are now on the agenda at item 12E, our Ehlers presentation. So with that, I'll let you take it away. If you don't mind introducing yourself again, and
Sure.
and then we'll go from there.
Yes, thank you for having me. My name's Jeff Seeley. I'm with Ehlers, and we've worked with the district for many years as your financial advisor. And today we want to continue with our conversation that we had on February 7th. We had a discussion at your work session. You also alluded to a couple of events that we're going to talk about, taking a look at, we put together a short PowerPoint here, and the easiest way to look at this. So you have two, what I'm terming critical events coming up, and you're well aware of them. You mentioned them tonight. These events, depending on which direction you go, is going to impact your budget and impact your capital facilities, improvements, and so forth in the future. So we want to talk a little bit about them. The number one that you're going to be dealing with is the operating referendum. And you have two operating referendums in place, and part of it is expiring, coming up for taxes payable 2024, which is your 24-25 school year. You won't have any of that revenue anymore. And that is going to have a significant impact on your budget, depending on what you do with it. There's some significant dollars associated with that. And the second event is your existing debt service is scheduled to drop off significantly for fiscal 2025. So both these are lining up at roughly the same time here. And whenever you have a drop in debt, and we spoke a little bit about this, you have a significant opportunity to go ahead and address some capital needs when that debt is dropping off. The concept is it's harder to get the community support if you're adding debt taxes on top of existing debt taxes. But if your debt taxes are dropping because you're retiring debt, that's a more opportune time to get community support to roll in new capital needs and issue new financing. So now is the ideal time to begin addressing these events, because you do need some planning time with this, and especially if you're going to be involved in a community survey and so forth. All that takes time. So you have, just recap, you have two referendum authorities, your operating referendum, which goes towards your operational budget, your instruction, and so forth. First one was approved in November 13 for 10 years. It's subject to inflation, so it is adjusted each year. It's $632.50 for pupil for the 23-24 school year, and it will expire after that. You have the easiest way to deal with that is a straight renewal, because people, you're asking for the same amount, people understand it, they've been paying it, there isn't a change in their taxes. So if you are looking at a straight renewal, you'd be looking at, you have two opportunities before you lose the money. November of 22, and you can only have operating referendum elections in November, and November of 23. So if it were not to pass, or you didn't put it out there after November 23, you've lost that money. Your second one, you have some time on it, so we aren't really going to talk much about it, but it's $240 per student. And just to give you an idea, that first one is about just shy of $2.2 million. So if that goes away, you have a significant hole in your budget. The second one is about $825,000, but you have quite a bit of time on that. So here's what it looks like. You can see the orange is your first referendum, that's 632, and it's going to go away after 2024. The other one continues on. So you have to decide what you want to do to address this revenue shortfall that's coming up. So options. So I mentioned the simplest, most straightforward option is a straight renewal. So option one is renewing it, and we're just looking at that first part of it, renewing the referendum authority number one. And that would be, again, election in 22 or 23 of November. It maintains your current amount. It goes out for 10 years. It's subject to annual inflation, just like your other one. So nothing changes. You would put the exact same thing on the ballot. Your referendum number two is still out there. And we talked about the ballot language last time. With a straight renewal, it says by voting yes for this, you're voting to extend a current referendum authority. Yes.
Yeah. Is it okay to ask questions?
Absolutely, yep.
Last few years, the inflation's been like 1.5%. Now it's up to 8.5. So is there a limit of inflationary factor? Or,
no.
So if it's 8 or 9%, then that would increase the next year?
So about 3 or 4 times a year, the Department of Education updates the inflationary numbers based on the CPI Urban Index. So because it's been 2% or less, that's what we were seeing, in adjustments over the years. We're likely to see a much larger adjustment coming up for future years. They're going to use the CPI to determine that.
There's no limit.
No.
Inflation could double, and then...
Yes, and the Department of Education would take the index that they've always been using and calculate it, and then apply that.
So there's no limit of increase per...
Not in statute.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you so much.
You bet. So the second option, a little different. If you determine that you want more money, you could do what we call revoke and replace. And you can actually, well, in order to get it implemented on time, you'd still be dealing with the same November elections, the 22-23. So you could, in 22, you could revoke your existing authority, that's $632, and let's just say you determine that you need $800. You could replace it with $800, okay? That's one option. Or in 23, you could just put a larger number out there because you would be doing it a year early in 22. That's where the revoking the old, replacing it comes in. If you're doing it when it expires, you could just put the $800 number out there if that was the number that you decided on. So basically this option is you can change the amount. There's ways of changing the amount. Now, it would say right on the ballot that by voting yes for this, you are voting for a tax increase. So that's what we call the unfavorable language. It is not a straight renewal. So the next option, you could address both authorities. You could revoke both authorities, simplify it, put it all into a single referendum authority, and whatever amount you determine is appropriate. So instead of having two authorities that you're dealing with every few, number of years renewing or something along that line, you could revoke them both and put them in place. So other options, we talked last time about technology levy or capital projects levy. A technology levy is a type of capital projects levy that's just more defined, limited to technology. So that is something that you could do. You could do part operating referendum, part capital project levy. You could do all capital project levy. But understand that, as we talked about last time, it's a whole different tax base. If you go that route, and that route works because you're already spending possibly, $2 million in technology? 2.1 million. So you would create a funding source for that. That would free up the money to support your operations and instructional budget. So it provides a revenue source dedicated to technology. But it is, the taxes are spread on different tax base. So it affects different types of taxpayers differently. So when I mentioned renewal is the most simple approach, basically the tax impact is going to be zero. Here's what I'm paying now. Here's the renewal. It's the same dollar amount, same tax impact for my home, my type of property, and so forth. If I switch it to a different tax base, like a technology levy, now all of a sudden, even if we generate the exact same dollar amount, my type of property is going to be affected either in a positive way, in other words, I pay less taxes, or in a negative way, I pay more taxes because you're shifting the tax bases on it. So it does complicate the election a little bit if you say, you know, we're generating the same dollar amount, so it's kind of like a renewal, but my taxes are going up and someone else's are going down. It's really not a renewal the way it impacts me versus a straight renewal on an operating referendum. And you're much more limited in the use of the funds. It has to be spent on the technology. So this chart here, this is an example of what I mean. So the green column is your expiring operating referendum, $632.50 a student, which is about $2,167,000. You get about $81,000 of that in aid and about $2,085,000 in levy. So you get a little bit of aid on the operating referendum. And you can see if I have a $200,000 house, I'm paying $151, which if that expires, I'm going to save that as a taxpayer. If I have a $100,000 business, I'm paying $76, the same. And then the ag land is not assessed. They do not pay taxes on an operating referendum. So if we renew it, the third column is a straight renewal operating referendum, but if we go back one column, the capital project, same dollar amount, $2,167,000. So it's the same pupil equivalent. But you can see as a homeowner, I'm going to pay less on a capital project or technology levy because what it's doing is it's shifting the tax burden to the ag land and to a little bit to the commercial. So commercial and businesses will pay more, ag land will pay more, the residents will pay less. So there's a shifting effect happening. So that's what I mean. From the standpoint of a taxpayer, if you shift tax bases, you can't really line it up so I'm held harmless, if you will, on what I'm paying would be equivalent to what I would be paying on an equivalent dollar amount. But that is an option to do that. Now, the second event I mentioned is you have approximately $2.14 million reduction in your debt service levy. And right now is an ideal time to start planning for it because addressing this is lining up with the same timeline we just talked about, the operating referendum. By the end of 2023, if you're going to go out for an election, you will have wanted to have done that in order to prevent your debt service from dropping. Because once it drops, it's always a lot harder to convince people to reinstate it through a vote as opposed to exchanging the old with the new. So if you time this out to replace the old with the new when it drops, you are increasing your chance of success through a voter-approved capital or bond election. And you can, obviously, that controls the tax impact by aligning those up. In your particular case, the first levy would be effective for taxes 2024. Once the levy drops, again, it's very difficult to add it back. And the success rate would be higher if you line it up. So taking a look at this next chart, this is, you can see I highlighted the year that it's 2.7 way to the right, and it drops to 634,000. That's your drop. This one might be a little easier to see. Right there is your, we include your lease levy in there because it's a capital levy also, but the orange is your existing bonds. You can see that very, very significant drop right there, and that is what you will be considering whether or not you want to do capital improvements and line up the financing to come online when that, in the year that that drops. So what are your options? One is, if you're going to address this, a voter-approved bond sometime in 2023. Now, there's 5 different dates, and we'll hit that in a minute. There's also certain board-approved bonds that you can go ahead and issue. You've already done one of those. Remember the parking lots, the abatement bond? That's a board-approved bond that has a tax levy impact. You can issue bonds for health and safety improvements in indoor air quality, a fire alarm and suppression, and asbestos abatement. So if you have, and maybe you don't even have those projects, but if you do, you don't need a vote on those. You can go ahead and board approve the issuance of bonds, which will maintain some or most of that tax levy. One of the financing options that I didn't put in there because you're using most of your lease levy authority, that's a limited amount, you're using a good chunk of it, but you could do a building addition. You could address surfaces like artificial turf or track, or you could do other facilities for community ed or alternative learning through a lease, and then levy to make the payments on the lease. Now, you're using up half your authority already. So I didn't put it up there because at this moment, it's probably not the most practical option, but it is an option, if you, especially if you have a smaller project, because then you might be able to fit it in within the maximum lease levy authority. The capital project levy or technology shows up here again. This one's spread on the same tax base. So if you were replacing your debt service payment dollar for dollar with a capital project levy or technology, it would affect everyone but ag land the same. And ag land only because the bonds qualify for the ag to school credit, the capital project levy and technology does not. But the residential businesses, they would, their tax impact would be equivalent if you're generating the same dollar amount.
Jeff, can I ask you a question?
Yep.
Can you bond for technology?
Yes.
You can bond for technology, and in that case, the ag land owners get that tax credit, or no?
No, not for the tech levy that you're talking about.
Not for the tech levy, but if you were to do a capital, say a voter-approved bond,
yep,
and you're purchasing a chunk of technology with that, it would. Now, you can only sell or finance for the time period that the product or whatever you're buying or improving is not obsolete. So if you were to do bonds for technology, you'd probably be looking at a 3-year bond, maybe a 4-year bond.
So that's new equipment. That's different than pulling the $2 million of our technology expenses out.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
So we would have to structure the bonds differently than if you did a facility and did a 20-year bond, but you can.
However, you could do it, and then with the offset of the current bonds going out in 2024, then it would be an apples-to-apples comparison if you bonded, but it has to be new equipment too. You wouldn't be able to replace the other stuff.
And the other thing is, and that's in here, short-term solutions. So we've implemented some short-term solutions for districts. They may have looked at this, been in a situation like you are, and say, well, we're not quite ready to decide what type of scope and capital needs, type of project, amount, all that. We want to buy some extra time. Or you might go through an election and it fails, and all of a sudden you're facing that drop-off, but you really want to preserve it. So you could do smaller projects, maybe non-voter approved, and pay for them over a very short period of time, maintain that levy for a couple of years to basically move that dropout out a few years. You can do that with a one-time health and safety levy. So there are options to change that timing of that drop-off also if you need it. But you have time to go ahead and plan and figure out what you want to do before all the elections, well, before that debt drops off at the end of '23. And then you can combine some of these. You could do some voter approved, you could do some board approved, depending on what your needs are. So one of the things we're going to talk about is that's going to be a big step in your process to determine what your needs are, first of all, and then we can figure out how we might want to finance it. So
Jeff, I got a question, just a general question. The concept, especially in capital, is basically that's a mortgage. You want to pay it off.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what everybody has their house, they want to pay it off. You want to get that down to zero. So when this capital pays off, and then to me it's, you're keeping maybe taxes artificially high because something's, I don't know, something's dropping off. Oh, by the way, we can take that money and put it towards operating, right?
Well, you wouldn't put it towards operating.
Well, but the drop off, they say, oh, we dropped off X number of dollars, why don't we just add it to an operating levy because our tax, what people pay is being reduced because we paid off something. Is that too general of a question?
Yeah, so you could, so you have over 2 million dropping off on your operating, you have over 2 million dropping off on your debt. So you could say, let's add 4 million to operating, but 2 million of it would be on a totally different tax base. So again, now you're affecting different property owners or the types of property classifications differently. But you could do that. I mean, you could say we need the operating dollars, we don't need the capital, and add that to an operating levy. Again, it'd be a little bit messy because it just doesn't quite line up that way, but you could. And here's the thing. So you aren't necessarily keeping your debt taxes artificially high if you truly have the needs and you're going ahead and addressing them. You're just timing of it. The timing is such that it's kind of beneficial to the taxpayers. Instead of piling on what they're already paying, you wait till the old one's paid off. So as long as the need is there and people understand the need and support the need, then I probably wouldn't call it, you're keeping it artificially high. You're maintaining it, but you're still addressing those needs.
Then how do we address, maybe that's not something you can answer, but based on economy, how people feel. Mm-hmm. Right now, $4 a gallon over for gas, food's gone up, natural gas has gone up, pretty much everything has gone up.
Right.
And we'll be doing a survey.
Yes.
And I don't know what it's going to say, but how do you address something like that? I mean, maybe this is beyond your scope, but as compared to 4 years ago.
Right. Well, you have some things working against you. First of all, obviously the economy, the inflation. Construction inflation is going up. The longer you wait, the more expensive these projects are going to be. Interest rates are going up. The longer you wait, the more expensive the financing is going to be. So I mean that you could argue that either way, whether that's it's working against you now, but if you wait, it works against you even more. But the needs still don't go away. So again, I go back to, do you have the needs? And that's where you really have to identify what you need to do in the district for capital, facility improvements, and then prioritize and sort through and determine the scope of the project.
I'm more with the operating, not the capital, but more of the operating.
So the operating is going to create some issues because, it's a drop of $2 million. Inflation is at 8%. You're going to run some long-term or some 5-year financial projections to try to determine whether you need additional money. So those are steps in the process for addressing the operating referendum and determining is the renewal the appropriate way to go. Now, I maintain a a straight renewal has a lot higher success rate than adding. So even if you want more money, you could run a 2-part question, a renewal and then an extra X dollars, whatever you determine that to be. And then that way, you increase the chance that it's going to pass on the renewal side. The second question may not get the support of the first, but that's, something that you'd want to consider, especially if you're down to the last chance to renew it before you lose the money.
What's your opinion of multiple questions? I know we've talked about it as a board. 1 question, 2 questions, 4 questions. What's your opinion?
You get beyond 2, it gets confusing. Confused voter is a no voter. I think in certain situations, 2 questions make a lot of sense. I think in your situation, that renewal is going to be critical. And if you get to that point where, you could try and increase this year, in 22. If that fails, you're going to have to come back for something in November 23, and I would split them then. I would put a straight renewal on to make sure you don't lose that money, and then a second question if you need more.
And then the best time is there's presidential year, midterm, and then off year.
Yes.
And we know which got the best or you want to call it, and then the worst, I guess.
Yeah, off years generally have a little higher success rate. Of course, we've seen almost all the operating referendum renewals pass. They pass with a very high success rate regardless of the timing. But a lot of times you can't really pick and choose the timing of a renewal because it lines up when it's expiring. So.
But here we have 2 chances.
You have 2 chances.
2 chances.
And you should always take advantage of both chances in case one doesn't pass. So you'd be doing November 22, that's a midterm and governor election. They typically have a little lower rate of success. And then you have 23, which is an off year.
Because the current levy was passed in an off year.
Yep.
2013.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep. So going back to the bonds, all right, so you saw this last time, but we updated for the higher interest rates. Tax neutral means, here's what you're paying now, how much can we issue in bonds and maintain what you're paying? In other words, it doesn't go above what you're currently paying on debt service. And the answer is about $31 million. So you have a lot of flexibility with the amount of bonds you could do. Now, that's not saying that you have to issue 31 million or there's advantages to doing less. If you did less, you can still maintain that, just shorten this up. Say you need 15, 16 million, maybe you do a 12-year or something and maintain that tax rate. Or obviously you can decide to lower it if you want.
Jeff, that screen right there is for bond, not a levy renewal.
This is a bond.
Bond, right. So
Yep.
building, brick and mortar bond.
Brick and mortar. So if we look back at that chart, the orange is your existing. Of course, we rolled in the lease also in there, in the light blue. But the blue bars, you can see they don't start till the old one's paid off. And that generates $31 million over 20 years. So your project costs could be that high without a tax increase. So when you're looking at the survey, one of the things surveys do is they try to measure or determine the tax tolerance, if you will, of the community. How much are community members willing to pay? Well, when they're working on this, they should keep in mind that you have these drops both in operating referendum and debt. So therefore, you can do a lot without an added increase. Now, that is not to say people aren't paying taxes on the new bonds. It's to say that they're paying at this level, they would continue to pay at this level at that amount.
Seems like we're mixing up the bond and operating levy, and I'm trying to figure out, because we were talking about the board and operating levy.
Yeah, well,
nothing with bonds. It just, so you
have both going on. So, and right now, if you're going to take some sort of action to time it when those expire, right now is when you need to start the planning process. So we wouldn't be having this conversation if your debt was dropping off 10 years from now, right?
Oh, okay.
But it happens to be dropping off at the same time your operating referendum is. So it does get a little confusing when you start, especially since some of the options you can do some mixing and matching.
But that's why I brought up that thing of artificially keeping taxes high when something drops off.
Yeah, I don't know what we have that's artificial.
Yeah, that's
the hard part. What are we doing now that's artificial? I mean, we can get into a debate on this all night, but I just think, I don't want to interrupt your meeting, but I think that Jeff, can you conclude the PowerPoint?
Oh, yeah.
So we can get out of here, get through this whole thing, so thanks.
That's okay, I have all night. So anyway, your election dates, if you're doing bond or capital project, those are your 23 election dates. Something, in order to prevent the drop-off, you would have to have something pass or a board-approved financing in place by the end of 23, and same with your operating referendum. You've seen this from the last one. You guys are relatively low. You're actually on the lowest of total school taxes on a $200,000 home. So that compares well, very fiscally conservative. That's always nice to see. So again, your operating referendum, it's expiring. You'll want to do something with that and your debt levy. As far as the operating referendum, you want to determine your appropriate size. You don't want to be in a situation where you don't have enough money 2 years down the road. So whatever you do some long-range budgetary planning and so forth, and determine what that amount is you need. Is it $2.1 million, which is equivalent to what's expiring, or is it $3 million? Going to the bond, bricks and mortar, you'll want a facility study or something, an internal one at least. But we see a lot, most schools are working with an outside firm, a construction management firm, an engineering firm, an architect firm, and they're assessing their needs. This takes a while, and you will want to start that, select somebody to work with and start it really soon in order to get something done in 23. You want to start involving the public, especially once you start making these assessments on what you need. So committees involvement. You'll want to obviously prioritize these. You might get a list of $40 million and you say, well, we aren't doing that. So you need to prioritize and figure it out. Develop options for the capital improvements. We'll put financing plans to the options that are put together. Whatever your capital needs are, we'll put options together for that. Ultimately, you'll want some of the information to help you prioritize coming back through the survey, and then you can select which options are best. Once you decide that, we'll put together final financing plans, secure approval from the state, and move ahead with an election or a board-authorized financing. So,
It's a lot to absorb, and I break it down into, right now, we'll get to the ballot questions and some of those other pieces in a little while, not tonight. We're working on a document that's showing what are the positive effects of passing an operating levy, what are the negative effects, and we should have something for you fairly soon for that whole thing, for an operating levy. And the operating levies are operations. As Jeff said, when you renew the current levy, it doesn't impact the taxes. You can determine if it's a need or not. You're looking at $1.9 million of cuts probably next spring of '22. So if that's not a need, that's not a need. If you think it's a need, then maybe you better think about another operating levy to add on to those things. So those are the things that we haven't done yet, and that's where the debate will happen, but we're just not quite there yet. What Jeff did is just pointed out where the tax impact will be so that we can make some of those decisions in the future. Philosophically, it's up to you guys to determine whether or not we run an operating levy next fall. But you know the difference, right? You know that if you don't run one for 2 years, the impact's going to be probably close to $6 million of cuts. If you decide to renew, you're still looking at probably $1.9 million because you're dropping 100 students per year for the next 4 or 5 years, right? So you have to determine, do you want to just maintain that or do you want to increase that? And that'll be something you have to look at. The tech levy, there could be a little bit more of a twist on that too, just because you could do a tech levy. We didn't show you what the impact would be if we rolled that into the bond rolling off too. We showed the comparison between the tech levy and the operating levy, and certainly the tech levy affects taxes differently than an operating. But you could take a little bit of that bond if you don't think that you need $31 million in a couple of years, which I think you do, to use that tech levy to soften some of the blow to the commercial and ag land. So Cabinet is well aware of this. Scott's well versed in this, and we have Jeff right there too. And so we're going to try to put something together that simplifies this and then allow you to start having a really good debate so you can make a decision here in the future on what you want to do for this fall and following fall.
Jeff, right now it's 632. If theoretically we just say increase it by $1, that would kick in the tax statement, right?
Yes, it would be the non-preferred language.
Okay.
Even 1 penny would change it.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question on that too, Jeff. If you do both levies that are out there right now, and you did a revoke and replace and put those 2 levies together,
Yes.
it doesn't increase the tax, but do you have to still put the negative language on there?
You do.
You do, okay.
Yep. Yeah, renewal is exactly the same. You change the structure, doesn't qualify. So the main purpose of this was, again, to cover your 2 events, which are also opportunities for you to address needs, but also kind of get you thinking that we really need to start planning this, because these are going to sneak up on us, and if we wanted to utilize where the debt's dropping off or make sure we don't lose operating referendum dollars, we really need to start now the planning of that.
Other questions, board members? Appreciate all the info and slides, and apologize it's 10 to 9, so. But thank you, we appreciate it.
It's still light up.
Great information.
Is it? I don't know yet.
It's eye-opening, and this is just my perspective. I'm not speaking for anybody else, but it's very clear in my mind that we need to pass the renewal, because if not, you're going to have over $2 million of cuts. And on top of the $2 million in cuts, you're likely going to have $1.9 million next year if we don't increase the investment of some form. So that's just me, that's nobody else, but it's clear we have some action that we need to decide on, so thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
By golly, we're almost through 12.
It's an easy one.
12G, no, that was 12G, I'm sorry. 12H, consider approval of the retirement of Superintendent Todd Sesker, 11 years of service. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Reluctant second.
Who's that?
I'll let Jerry have it.
We have a motion by Ms. Cavalier and a second by Mr. Robichaud. This is just making this formal. We've been aware of it, but it's making it formal for file purposes and whatnot, so.
Mr. Chair, if we
Yes.
don't vote for this, then we keep Todd.
Yeah, then he probably walks, I don't know. I think one way or another, he's going to enjoy July. So anyway, any other discussion?
I'll just say thank you formally to the school district, the citizens of this community and this district. It's a wonderful district. I've enjoyed working here for 11 years, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. So thank you for all of your support and our community support. So thank you very much.
Superintendent Sesker, I'm sure there's a retirement party for you in late June? 23rd. June 23rd, and I am sure we'll talk more at our last board meeting here in June, but yeah, just a big thank you. Once again, I'm not speaking for others, but we appreciate all the service, so.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other discussion?
No, we'll discuss it more another time.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Were you nervous on that?
No.
You're not going to blow it, are you, at this point?
Item 13, other items of information. 13A, school board members, the floor is yours. Anything you'd like to share?
Mr. Chair, if I may, so last week I had the pleasure of enjoying the recognition of a lot of our students here in the district. Last Tuesday, May 17th, I attended the middle school orchestra concert. I have a vested interest with a granddaughter playing in 6th grade, but wow, talk about talented kids, real dedicated, energetic teacher, and that program, and you walk away going, this is what Faribault's about. We really had that. And then, like many other board members, last Wednesday then, I attended the senior awards, over $200,000 in scholarships and things given out. My goodness, our kids are flourishing, and kudos to Mr. Benty and the staff and all that. Excellent program. It was nice to see our students up there with their caps and gowns and recognizing the accomplishments and the hard work throughout their career that they've done. So again, it was a great day. It's a great week. Always great day to be a Falcon, and a real proud Falcon as well. So.
Mr. Robichaud.
I just want to follow up on what Mr. Billingham said with one additional comment. There was kind of a loud thunder, and I saw Mr. Sesker and Mr. Benty just kind of all of a sudden started shaking based on what happened last year. And I think they finally settled down, realizing that it was not the same as last year.
We did create a little plan while we were talking up there, too. So we had it.
You had a bucket and back in case it started raining through the ceiling again. Other comments, board members? I'll jump on that train. Last Wednesday night was really, really great. Tremendous amount of talent on that stage. And in our schools, there's a lot of talented people that weren't on that stage. Just a big thank you to Mr. Robichaud for talking to the board about starting a scholarship, and thank you to all of you that contributed to that scholarship. To those of you that couldn't make it, we're sorry you weren't in that inaugural picture. But anyway, it was a great night. And then I just wanted one other thing just mention on my drive here. I pulled in about 4:30ish or so, and I saw the soccer complex across the road pretty packed. And I called Superintendent Sesker and I said, "Are you in your office?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "You ought to come across the street and take a peek at this." Nearly 100 kids in the Little Falcons soccer program over there, with parents sitting inside the fence, parents standing outside the fence. Danette, what a great opportunity if you want to write an article with the newspaper on this Little Falcons program. They had nearly 100 students across there, and they have nearly 30 students in back doing cross-country. And if you remember, this is a pilot that we're learning from for next year, and really, really excited about it. But just think that's 100 kids doing something, roughly about 125 kids if you combine the two sports, doing something after school that they probably wouldn't be doing on a regular basis. So that's that. Anything else? Any other comments? Okay, brings us to item 13B, Superintendent Sesker, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm not going to add other to that, other than the business luncheon that we had by the chamber. And thanks to Cassie for organizing that. It went very well. And our FEEP program, the Falcon Education Excellence Program, won an award for, what's the title of it again, Cassie?
Excellence in Education.
Excellence in Education for our business partnerships for the chamber. So congratulations to FEEP, and Kim Butzel is current chair right now, and of course FAPSETA, that Jerry's a chair of, is the overlying umbrella, the 501c3 that supports us, and we had a nice turnout. It was fun.
Anything else? Okay, this brings us to item 14, dates to remember. June 7th, 2022 is a policy meeting. June 13th, 2022 is a work session. June 20th, 2022 is a finance meeting, and June 27th, 2022 is our next business meeting. With that, I would entertain a motion to move this meeting into a closed session. So that's where everybody else leaves and we stay and do a little more work. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to close this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Steves, a second by Mr. Olson. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, everybody, for attending this meeting. We'll take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll have this